subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
That is, how to calculate the number of amino acids in the protein and the number of mRNA bases in the double-stranded DNA gene in the self-healing serum. Kurt has been studying the specific formula for optimizing the lizard serum. He occasionally brings up some difficult problems in biological equations to encourage everyone to brainstorm and research how to solve these problems. These biological equations are quite fragmented and there is no release of key data, so no one knows the whole picture. We only know that Minister Kurt is working on a more powerful self-healing potion, far surpassing the effectiveness of trauma medicine. Trauma medicine is already considered a very powerful treatment drug in their minds, and they can hardly imagine what kind of effect will a more powerful self-healing potion have. As everyone continues to brainstorm together, the problems are constantly being overcome. The specific formula optimization is constantly taking shape. The efficiency far exceeds when Kurt was researching alone. So, every time a problem is continuously overcome, Kurt feels a trace of gratitude towards Su Luo. If the boss gives him the position of research department head and gives him a research team, he would never have achieved such success in such a short time. As the problems continue to be solved, in the end, only the problem on the whiteboard remains. But this problem has been plaguing everyone in the research institute. So many days have passed. The other problems have all been solved. Only this problem has remained unsolved, as if there is no correct answer at all. People in the laboratory are all feeling anxious. Some people even calculate on the walls of the restroom, covering several panels with calculations. Some people are so deep in thought and too engrossed that they even calculate these two values in their dreams. In the end, the result of their calculations turns into a word, Xiao Tian. In the end, the dream turned into a nightmare, causing people to wake up in a cold sweat. Among them, Kurt is the most dedicated. During this time, he has been thinking about this problem every day. Eating, walking, going to the restroom, sleeping, he has been tirelessly trying to solve this problem. He has tried countless times, but has not found a successful answer. Now, his mind is filled with number of amino acids in proteins and number of RNA bases in double-stranded DNA genes. At this moment, everyone is sitting in a laboratory trying to solve the problem. Some are discussing, some are constantly trying to establish new equations to find the answer, and some are scratching their heads. Some people are starting to doubt themselves. Can we really find the required number of amino acids and mRNA bases? I have tried so many times, but I can't find the correct solution. Maybe there is no answer. I try to find a number of peptide bonds, loss of water, and the number of peptide chains, but I couldn't find them at all. What I have solved is simply wrong and cannot be put together. I have also tried countless times, but I can't find the number of peptide chains. I calculated the total molecular weight of nucleotides and the total molecular weight of dehydrated DNA to calculate the molecular weight of DNA. But I can't calculate further. My brain is about to explode. I tried to solve the total number of nucleotides, but it's impossible. It's too difficult. Or maybe the problem itself is wrong. Everyone is feeling frustrated, feeling that their mindset is about to collapse. Kurt looked at the whiteboard and also started to doubt. Is it really impossible to solve? Is it really impossible to synthesize the self-healing potion? He shook his head. No. It must be solvable. The previous equations are correct, which means there must be a solution. But how can we find the solution? Kurt grabbed his hair with his remaining hand. He must find a solution because he doesn't want to live with only one hand anymore. While everyone was struggling with headaches, Su Luo walked in. He looked at the numerous formulas on the whiteboards around him. He immediately recognized that these are the formulas related to the super powerful self-healing potion. Looking at those densely packed formulas, Su Luo nodded slightly. If he were to calculate them, it would also take a lot of time, but he simply didn't have that much time for these calculations. He looked at the central whiteboard. Calculate the number of amino acids in proteins and the number of mRNA bases in double-stranded DNA genes. Su Luo murmured, His brain started to calculate rapidly. He softly recited, number of bases in DNA genes, number of bases in mRNA, number of amino acids in protein 6, 3, 1. Number of peptide bonds, plus number of peptide chains, number of amino acids, number of mRNA bases, slash 3 number of DNA gene bases, slash 6. He walked towards a whiteboard and started to calculate. 070 shocked the research department. Super self-healing potion formula completed. Su Luo started calculating directly on a whiteboard. As he muttered to himself, he wrote at the same time. DNA molecular weight, total molecular weight of nucleotides, total molecular weight of dehydrated DNA, 6 and D18 minus 2. So I should calculate the total molecular weight of dehydrated DNA. mRNA molecular weight, total molecular weight of nucleotides, total molecular weight of dehydrated mRNA, 3 and D18 minus 1. I've calculated the total molecular weight of nucleotides. Now, I'll continue calculating. His hands moved swiftly on the whiteboard. A large number of equations were written, continuously solved, and performed. There is only Su Luo's murmuring and the sound of the brush on the blackboard. Inside the pocket of his jacket, little Spider-Man crawled out a bit, curious as it observed the equations Su Luo kept writing. But it couldn't understand them at all. As it watched, little Spider-Man started feeling dizzy and weak, and it fell back into the pocket from the edge of the jacket. For little Spider-Man, those were not equations, but rather incomprehensible scriptures that made one's head spin. Su Luo's actions here quickly attracted the people around. Some people also recognized Su Luo's appearance. They recognized him as their new boss, Li Luo, although no one had ever seen Su Luo's face. But that hat, those big sunglasses, that stubble, all indicated the identity of the person in front of them. Watching Su Luo's actions, everyone started discussing. Isn't this our boss, Li Luo? What is he doing? Solving equations. He's actually solving equations. Is he completing some university task? He seems to be solving our problem, someone uncertainly said when they saw those familiar data and formulas. Hearing this, everyone in this 760 field was stunned. After all, no one had ever heard of a well-known biologist or rising star named Li Luo. Everyone was an elite in the field of biology, so they naturally knew the people in their field very well. Our boss is trying to solve our problem. I feel strange. Our boss looks like he has studied biology, the formulas and everything. It's quite professional, but can our boss challenge our entire research department? Is the boss trying to relax us, playing with us? When they saw Su Luo solving the problem, everyone felt strange. They didn't really believe that Su Luo could solve the problem. After all, he wasn't a top biologist, so why would he be able to solve a problem that they couldn't solve? Did they really think that something like Good Will Hunting would happen in real life? A top university math professor released a difficult math problem that no one could solve, only to be solved by a young janitor. Did they really think that there would be those kinds of unknown geniuses who would emerge after many years? How could that be possible? If someone was a genius, they would have already made a name for themselves and be known by everyone. But after carefully looking at what Su Luo wrote, everyone was stunned once again. However, this time it was because they saw that Su Luo's equations seemed to have something to them. Why do I feel like the boss's approach seems correct? It seems like it should be solved this way. A bald, middle-aged researcher started doubting his life. Oh my God, so this is how you solve the total number of nucleotides. This way we can obtain the number of dehydrated DNA. A researcher with a hoarse face suddenly realized, I can't believe it. This equation should be written like this. This way, we can solve the number of peptide chains, and then we can obtain the number of amino acids mRNA base pairs, /3 gene base pairs, /6. A dark-skinned female researcher widened her eyes as they watched Su Luo constantly write the process of solving two values. Everyone's initial doubts disappeared in an instant, and their eyes became brighter and brighter. Someone held their breath and said, Oh my God, our boss. Is he going to solve this difficult problem? I can't believe it. This top-level problem that has puzzled so many of us is going to be solved like this. Our boss's knowledge of biology is so terrifying, he has surpassed all of us, the top figures in the field of biology. They looked at Su Luo's back in disbelief. They looked at his stubble and big sunglasses. At this moment, they felt like they finally saw the true face of Su Luo beneath this disguise. What does this man, who can write down so many correct ideas, actually look like? No one had any idea at all. Scenes that only appear in movies unexpectedly appeared in reality at this moment. So, in the world, there really are those kinds of unknown geniuses, those kinds of hidden talents. He doesn't make a move, but when he does, it's astonishing. At this moment, everyone subconsciously held their breath, staring intently at Su Luo's writing. Inside the spacious laboratory, instantly, silence fell. Only the murmuring sound of Su Luo's voice and the sound of his pen scratching on the whiteboard. The whole room became extremely quiet. Kurt, who was next to him, looked at Su Luo's problem-solving process and train of thought, and suddenly had a moment of enlightenment. The problem that had been lingering in his mind was instantly solved at this moment. The most crucial problem was solved. After watching half of it, Kurt, who understood the train of thought, instantly knew how to arrive at the correct answer. At this moment of knowing there was a correct answer, Kurt's mind went blank in an instant, because the appearance of the correct answer meant that the optimization results of his lizard serum were out, and the formula for his lizard's super strong self-healing potion was out. It also meant that the method he had been longing for to heal his injured arm was out. He would be able to restore his damaged arm immediately. Thinking of this, Kurt instantly felt his head rush, enveloped in huge amounts of happiness. After the excitement and joy, he looked at Su Luo's back and cast a gaze of admiration and respect. His boss's ability in biology was truly terrifying, far surpassing Kurt's imagination. He couldn't imagine why there would be such a world-shaking talent in this world. The problem that had besieged their entire research department for such a long time was easily solved by the other party. At this moment, Su Luo's writing also reached the final step. With a few strokes, the last few steps were completed. Finally, 2 key values were written down. Seeing the final result, a hint of satisfaction flashed in Su Luo's eyes. It's solved. On the latest data researched by the laboratory researchers, he calculated the final result. This also meant that the formula for the lizard's self-healing potion had been successfully deduced. It also meant that he could carry the lizard's self-healing potion with him in the future, as if he had an extra life. With the problem solved, Su Luo felt a sense of accomplishment and happiness. Su Luo nodded in satisfaction. I truly am amazing. The people around him, who were silent, twitched their mouths when they heard Su Luo's self-praise. They didn't expect that their boss would have such an interesting personality. It made everyone feel a bit amused and helpless. Su Luo put down his pen. At this moment, he just emerged from his concentration. At the same time, he noticed that the entire laboratory was unusually quiet, so quiet that even the sound of breathing was absent, as if there was no one there. This was completely different from when he first entered. He turned around and saw that all eyes were focused on him. In those eyes, there was disbelief, eagerness, and admiration. Each face was flushed with excitement. Before Su Luo could say anything, the room exploded in an instant. Oh my God, boss, you actually solved this problem. Boss, you're actually a biology genius. Why have I never heard of your name or your academic papers? Oh my God, I never expected you to hide your talents so well. Turns out you're the most talented biologist in our company. I always thought you were just someone who cared about money, but I never expected you to be a technical person, and one of the best. Boss, how did you come up with this solution? How did you find your approach to solving it? Seeing everyone's praises, Su Luo calmly accepted them. Then he answered some of the researchers' questions. Some of the questions were very difficult, ones that had been puzzling these researchers for a long time, but he answered them all. After all, he now had a broader and deeper understanding of biology than the researchers. His words enlightened the researchers. At the same time, it made them admire him even more. After answering some questions, he pulled Kurt aside and said something. Su Luo left. The researchers' eyes were still on Su Luo. After all, to them, Su Luo was simply the leader in the field of biology. For these researchers, nothing attracted their attention and admiration more than a peer in their industry who was an expert and a master. I never expected our boss to be so amazing. I heard our boss is very young, not even 30 yet. Upon hearing this, the people around them all gasped. So young? Wow! To have such deep knowledge at such a young age, our boss is like a second Tony Stark. If they knew that Su Luo was only in his early 20s, not even 25 yet, they would probably be even more amazed. At this moment, almost all the researchers present became fans of Su Luo, solely because of his academic achievements, while the researchers were discussing excitedly. Inside the closed meeting room of the laboratory, there were only Su Luo and Kurt. Su Luo looked at Kurt and said, "The crucial data is out. There shouldn't be any difficulties in making the lizard self-healing potion." Kurt nodded quickly. "Don't worry, boss. With the addition of these last two values, I have completely figured out the formula. Next, we just need to start production. With our current production line, we have the capacity to produce this lizard self-healing potion." Upon hearing Kurt's words, Su Luo nodded in satisfaction. Kurt continued, "However, compared to ordinary wound medicine, this self-healing potion will be much more expensive. Because it involves extraction and purification, and the production process is quite complex. So the cost of one vial of the potion will be around 100,000 USD. Su Luo murmured. "Only 100,000 USD? It seems that the cost of this potion is not high." Kurt nodded. "Indeed, compared to ordinary wound medicine, it is considered expensive, but considering its terrifying self-healing ability, it is actually quite cheap." Su Luo said, "Currently, this potion will not be sold to the public. We will only produce it in small quantities and provide it exclusively to me. Definitely, after it is produced, I will give you a bottle to help you recover. Also, give me a copy of the formula later." Upon hearing this, Kurt nodded excitedly and said, "Thank you, boss. I will write down the formula for you later." He looked at his empty, severed arm and smiled slightly. After so many years, these days of hardship have finally come to an end. Su Luo continued, "By the way, is my fitness equipment ready?" Upon hearing this, Kurt quickly nodded and said, "Don't worry, boss. I will definitely fulfill the promise I made. An hour ago, the fitness equipment you requested has been completely built. Furthermore, the production was done in batches and a confidentiality agreement was signed. The technology of these fitness equipment will not be leaked." Su Luo was very satisfied with Kurt's cautious attitude. He said, "Take me there." Kurt nodded and said, "All right." Immediately, Kurt led the way. Kurt walked beside Su Luo and said, "Because your equipment is relatively large in size and requires a lot of energy, I placed them in a large laboratory. In this way, it ensures privacy and security. Furthermore, I had the unnecessary equipment in the large laboratory moved to another place, turning the laboratory into a fitness room. And only you have the permission to enter, others are not allowed. In the future, you can use it here with peace of mind." Su Luo was very satisfied with Kurt's work. He thought that Kurt had indeed considered everything thoroughly. At the same time, Su Luo was also looking forward to his own training. Soon, Su Luo arrived at his specially made fitness room. The door recognized Su Luo's identity and opened. Immediately, Su Luo walked in. Kurt did not enter. After all, the equipment inside was built according to Su Luo's requirements, and he didn't know how to use them. As soon as Su Luo entered, he saw a large number of massive equipment, each piece taking up the space of an ordinary room. They looked like small mountains made of steel, giving off a sense of weightiness. Su Luo looked at these equipment with a satisfied expression. At this moment, little Spider-Man also jumped out and curiously looked around at the massive equipment. For little Spider-Man, they were like mountains. Su Luo's eyes flashed with excitement as he said, "Next, it's time for my spider ability to rapidly improve." He then approached a barbell machine. The bar of the barbell was made of super alloy and was extremely hard. On both sides of the alloy bar were two huge amounts of alloy plates, originally with a heavy weight. The entire barbell was placed on a massive machine. This machine could generate powerful electromagnetic force to exert a terrifying weight on the barbell. It could reach up to 30 tons. The force exerted on the barbell could be adjusted by adjusting the electrical energy, ranging from 10 to 30 tons. Su Luo adjusted it to 15 tons, took a deep breath, lay on the solid alloy bench, and grabbed the magnetic barbell. Start. Veins bulged on Su Luo's hands. Boom! Boom! Su Luo slowly pushed up the steel, weighing 15 tons. 071 Overload Training Effect. Electric current stimulation training method. The little Spider-Man next to him saw this scene and almost popped his eyes out in shock, quickly retreating several steps with his 8 legs. 15 tons is basically Su Luo's limit. Even if he lifts it, it's still a bit difficult. When Su Luo's hands are extremely stable, without any trembling, as if they were robotic arms. At the same time, the posture is extremely standard. Only a stable and standard posture can give the muscles the greatest sense of compression and achieve the maximum exercise effect for the muscles. Pushing the magnetic barbell to the highest point, several veins popped on Su Luo's forehead. Su Luo took a breath and slowly lowered the magnetic barbell. Boom! The terrifying weight of 15 tons, like a mountain, pressed down on Su Luo's arms, also stretching his chest muscles. Like this, Su Luo lifted and dropped repeatedly. The terrifying weight pressed on his body, constantly stimulating his muscle cells. Soon enough, Su Luo was covered in sweat, his muscles swollen and sore. He still persisted. His hands continued to output with great stability. When he finally reached the point of exhaustion, the machine detected Su Luo's condition and immediately stopped applying gravity. The powerful electromagnetic force disappeared, and Su Luo's hands suddenly felt empty. The steel was suspended in midair by the adsorbent. Su Luo stood up from the bench, completely drenched in sweat, like a soaked chicken, his hands slightly weak and his chest muscles extremely sore. Su Luo understood that some muscle fibers in his chest muscles were starting to break and heal at this moment. Su Luo gasped for breath, saying, "This is just the first set of chest muscle exercises. Rest for a while and continue. In addition to the chest muscles, I need to train all the muscles in my back, shoulders, abdomen, arms, and legs. It seems my mission for today is still heavy," Su Luo said. After resting for a while, Su Luo continued to throw himself into training. He trained like crazy in this training ground, drenched in sweat. After finishing the magnetic dumbbell exercises, he started doing heavy squats. The entire squat rack was filled with huge amounts of iron blocks, like a mountain. He lifted the giant iron block and squatted down. With each rise and fall, there were constant booming sounds, like muffled thunder in the sky. The earth trembled slightly. From a distance, it looked like he was carrying a mountain, a tiny person holding up a huge mountain, creating a strong contrast that was extremely impactful. If it weren't for his extraordinary physique, an ordinary person would have probably gone into shock with such a crazy training method. As Su Luo continued to exercise constantly, the muscle fibers in his body were constantly being exercised and constantly healing, becoming stronger. He could clearly perceive that his muscle cells were becoming stronger and more powerful. At the end of the training, Su Luo was almost completely out of strength, and his body had reached its limit. Finally, gritting his teeth, after completing the last few sets, he completely collapsed on the ground, every muscle in his body extremely sore, as if they were about to burst. At this moment, Su Luo was covered in sweat, his skin red, veins popping, unexpectedly high body temperature. He was like a furnace. The overloaded operation activated every muscle cell in Su Luo's body, but also left him exhausted. He lay on the ground, gasping for breath, waiting for his body to recover some strength. Little Spider-Man cautiously sat down beside him, with a concerned look in its eyes. It rubbed Su Luo's forehead with its head. Su Luo smiled and gasped. "I'm fine, just an overloaded workout. Just a bit tired. I just need to rest for a while." Hearing Su Luo's words, little Spider-Man nodded. Su Luo looked at little Spider-Man and gasped, "Don't worry, I won't favor one over the other. I will create a set of specialized training equipment for you too. In the future, you will train with me to improve your own strength." He paused. "Rest assured, I will develop your spider physique to the fullest and make you the most powerful spider." Hearing Su Luo's words, little Spider-Man looked at Su Luo's exhausted state and the terrifying exercise equipment around, and its small eyes immediately became dull. Su Luo nodded seriously. "Yes, in the future, you'll train like me. Engage in overloaded training every day, maximizing the strengthening of your body. Don't worry, I will definitely give you the best equipment and invest the most money to create the most suitable training equipment for you." Su Luo smiled. Constantly training, constantly pushing your limits, and constantly breaking them is a very enjoyable thing. I know you are also happy being able to have your own independent heavyweight training equipment without spending a penny, and being able to constantly become stronger. Upon hearing Su Luo's words, little Spider-Man quickly shook its head vigorously. Its eyes filled with fear, and it retreated several steps in fear. Seeing this, Su Luo furrowed his brows slightly. "Are you not satisfied with my arrangement? Don't you want to become stronger with me?" Upon hearing Su Luo say, "Don't want to be together," little Spider-Man quickly shook its head to deny, indicating that it really wants to be together. It took a deep breath and took a few determined steps forward. In little Spider-Man's eyes, it will always be with Su Luo. It quickly pointed to the fitness equipment, then pointed to itself and nodded. It means that it is willing to train and become stronger. Seeing this, Su Luo's face relaxed, nodding in satisfaction. "That's right, becoming stronger is where we belong, understand?" Seeing Su Luo's satisfied expression, little Spider-Man's eyes lit up. Happy. Hearing Su Luo say "we," little Spider-Man quickly straightened its chest and nodded vigorously, deeply agreeing with Su Luo's words. Immediately, a hint of determination filled its eyes. It raised its two front legs and imitated the appearance of a human showing off its biceps. It means that it also wants to become stronger. It wants to become stronger with Su Luo. Seeing little Spider-Man like this, Su Luo was particularly satisfied. To be honest, Su Luo was quite satisfied with this little Spider-Man that he unintentionally created. It is very obedient and has great potential. At this moment, Su Luo's strength has also recovered somewhat. He slowly climbed up from the ground, feeling the soreness all over his body. This round of exercise has completely met the standard. I can stand up now. It seems that I should have recovered enough, no problem. He took a few steps, but his legs went weak and he knelt on the ground with a thud. Little Spider-Man beside him was startled by Su Luo's kneeling and jumped up high. Su Luo's mouth twitched slightly. "It seems like I need more time to recover." He immediately sat down on the ground. "I wonder how much strength I will gain after this training. With the repeated tearing and healing of my muscles, my strength should have improved significantly. I'll check with the instrument later." As he said this, Su Luo's stomach growled. Su Luo touched his hungry stomach. "I just finished exercising and the consumption was huge. Now I need to replenish with a large amount of high-nutrient food. Only with sufficient nutritional supplementation can the muscles become stronger. Otherwise, if there's only consumption without replenishment, the muscles will suffer significant damage and will actually impair their strength. So I'll finish eating first and then do the testing." Su Luo sat for a while, recovering more energy. He stood up, and Kurt prepared a large amount of food for him to replenish more nutrients. Soon, he devoured the piles of food, patting his full stomach, looking at the piles of bowls and plates in front of him. "My appetite has increased now." After finishing the food, Su Luo immediately felt a significant recovery of his physical strength, although there was still a strong sense of fatigue. He then went to the testing room and started the strength test. He punched the alloy sandbag. Boom! A loud noise. The numbers on the screen next to it rapidly climbed, finally reaching its peak, 15.5 tons. Seeing this, Su Luo narrowed his eyes slightly. "So, increased by half a ton? With this high-intensity training, I can only train once a day. So, it's equivalent to me gaining half a ton a day. Gaining half a ton of strength in a day would be astonishing if it were to be seen by others. But Su Luo was not very satisfied with this result. He still felt it was too slow. Su Luo murmured, "It seems that simply overloading training is not enough to meet my expectations. The stimulation to the muscles is still not enough. I need to find a way to increase the effectiveness of the training and further enhance the speed of strength improvement." For Su Luo, he will constantly search for various materials resembling Superman. Some of these materials have strong abilities, so he needs strong strength as a guarantee. Therefore, he needs to develop his spider physique to the extreme in order to have the confidence and assurance to search for materials. Su Luo stood still, lost in thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Right, if I want to enhance the training effect and stimulate muscle bursts, I can use electric current for stimulation. Electrocuting the muscles can make them exert strength beyond normal levels in a short period of time. It can also stimulate muscle healing and eliminate fatigue, allowing for more intense training. If stimulated scientifically for a long time, it can greatly accelerate muscle strengthening. However, the electric current needs to be specially designed, specifically tailored for my muscles, so that it won't damage them while stimulating and strengthening them. This type of electric current is called muscle function electricity. By placing electrodes on the surface of the skin and using carefully designed electric current, the muscles can contract and relax, enhancing their regenerative ability. Improving the final effort can increase muscle strength. In the case of injury and inability to train, maintaining the original level while relatively increasing some strength can promote the improvement of strength endurance. Su Luo thought of this and quickly started moving. He hurriedly ran to the laboratory and began conducting experiments and making preparations. He conducted experiments rapidly while continuously recording. In the application of muscle hypertrophy, it is advisable to use high-frequency, high-intensity, and narrow pulse stimulation loads with the aim of increasing muscle cross-sectional area. However, the stimulation intensity should not exceed the subject's maximum tolerance ability. Hormones that have a significant impact on muscle strength and growth include growth hormone, GH, and testosterone. GH exerts its effects through IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1EA, MGF, mechanical growth factor, and MyoG, myogenic differentiation factor. Based on calculations and speculation, it was found that MGF and mRNA significantly increased and peaked in the first week of electric stimulation in rat skeletal muscles, while MyoG and MGF were synchronized. And IGF-1 mRNA showed a linear increase, with the highest expression in the second week. It reached a plateau in the fourth week. In conclusion, muscle strength increased and muscle power significantly grew after more than 3 weeks of electrical stimulation. Su Luo's brain quickly started working, constantly calculating the values of muscle function electricity he needed and how to use the patterns. Because Su Luo was very familiar with his own body data. In addition, there were corresponding techniques for stimulating muscle growth with electric current. Su Luo only needed to upgrade and optimize them, so it didn't take much time. In no time at all, Su Luo completed the corresponding equipment for muscle function electricity, a specially designed bodysuit that covered the entire body. It had a large number of electrodes on it, which accurately and precisely stimulated Su Luo's muscle. Whether it was the position of the muscles or the intensity of the electric current released, everything was very precise, and it will automatically match the corresponding muscle groups and the corresponding electric current intensity with exercise, achieving the most efficient training. The entire technology has been optimized by Su Luo, and the effect far surpasses other muscle stimulation techniques on the market, making it safer and more powerful. It can significantly improve muscle strengthening speed. Looking at the clothes in front of him, Su Luo showed a satisfied expression. Very good. With this set of electroshock equipment, my future training should be more efficient. Thinking of this, Su Luo was quite happy. I'll test the effect first. He immediately put on the electric shock suit, then activated it, targeting the muscles of his arms. Immediately, a tingling electric current entered his arm muscles. In an instant, he could feel his muscles becoming stronger, and he felt that he could continue training for a while longer. Definitely, his body was already filled with fatigue, feeling sore and weak, so Su Luo couldn't continue training at all. He needed to rest. He looked at the screen next to him, which displayed real-time data of his body. It showed that the cells in his arm muscles had indeed been briefly strengthened and become stronger. Su Luo expressed his satisfaction, saying, "Very good. Tomorrow I could try the true effect of this equipment. The post-training enhancement effect should have a significant improvement." Just as he was about to withdraw his gaze, suddenly his gaze froze. He looked at a certain item and instantly held his breath, saying, "This is 072, the unexpected effect of electric current stimulation." Stupid Su Luo. On the screen, a data fluctuation appeared. That is the data of the special bioelectricity deep inside Su Luo's cells, and something has happened. According to the data, after Su Luo used electric shocks, the activity of the special bioelectricity in the shock cells increased slightly. Seeing this, a hint of surprise flashed in Su Luo's eyes. To release the internal electric current, it is necessary to increase their activity, so that they remain dormant in the depths of the body like stagnant water, unable to feel anything. According to Su Luo's research, to enhance activity, it is necessary to increase the amount of special bioelectricity. As long as there is enough special bioelectricity inside the cells, they will automatically become active. As long as the activity of the special bioelectricity reaches a certain level, it can be sensed by the human body and released. To increase the amount of special bioelectricity, it is necessary to strengthen the body. The stronger the body, the more special bioelectricity inside the cells. As long as the strength reaches 30 tons, the activity level of the special bioelectricity in the body reaches the point where it can be sensed and released by humans. But now Su Luo has discovered another way to increase the body's activity, which is to stimulate the cells through electric shocks. So if I simultaneously increase my physical strength and stimulate the cells with electric shocks, then I can quickly react to the special bioelectricity inside my body and release them. Thinking of the power of that little Spider-Man strike, 50,000 volts, the power of half a Pikachu. Su Luo's spirit was lifted. After all, for him, he was very much looking forward to having such a powerful electric ability. I didn't expect this electric shock suit to have such benefits. What an unexpected gain. A gleam of light flashed in Su Luo's eyes. Next, I will continue to see how long this electric shock effect can last and how much benefit it can bring. Saying this, Su Luo started to take action. He began to continuously stimulate his cells with electric current while watching the changes in the data on the screen. After a while, Su Luo found that each cell's activity would increase for a period of time after being stimulated by the electric shock suit. After a certain period of growth, the activity increase would saturate. In terms of efficiency, it is not comparable to the effects brought by daily exercise, but through accumulation, the benefits are still considerable. He immediately calculated the combined effects of exercise and electric shocks. Suddenly, he discovered that by exercising and receiving electric shocks at the same time, when his strength reached 24 tons, he could almost feel the special bioelectricity inside his body and release it. The threshold for release has been lowered to 24 tons, which means I can release the electric current earlier. Seeing this, Su Luo was quite happy. After Ming Angel uses the electric shock suit, my training effect will also be greatly improved. Then I will be able to reach the standard of 24 tons faster. Su Luo raised his hand and clenched it. In other words, I will soon have my own offensive super ability elemental attacks. Su Luo let out a breath. Then he put his electric shock suit in the training room. At the same time, Su Luo did not forget to optimize Osborn's network system and security system in the network department. He also set his own permissions to the highest level and imposed varying degrees of restrictions on others' permissions. After completing these tasks, Su Luo began to design training equipment for little Spider-Man. Because of his previous experience, Su Luo's design this time was very fast. In just a while, he designed all the heavyweight training equipment little Spider-Man needed. All that was left was to build them. After completing these tasks, Su Luo was ready to leave the company. But before leaving, he had some things to explain to Kurt. Su Luo called for Kurt. In a meeting room, Su Luo sat in a chair. Kurt stood in front of him. Kurt handed a formula to Su Luo. It is the formula for the lizard self-healing potion. At the same time, Kurt spoke up. Boss, the lizard self-healing potion has a powerful self-healing ability, but it cannot be continuously and indefinitely used. Based on my current clinical experience, after using the lizard self-healing potion once, the body will temporarily produce some potion antibodies. After taking it 5 times in a row, a complete medicinal antibody will be produced. If you take the lizard self-healing potion again within the next day, it will no longer have any effect. Hearing Kurt's words, Su Luo felt a slight unease. So you can use it 5 times in a row. Once you've used it 5 times, there will be a 1-day cool-down period. Kurt nodded. Boss, you understand correctly. Su Luo looked at the formula in his hand and calmly said, 5 times is enough. It's almost like having 5 lives. This lizard's self-healing potion is indeed very powerful. It's not in vain that you've researched it for so many years. Upon hearing this, Kurt blushed and smiled. This is not my credit. It's all thanks to you, boss. If it weren't for you, there wouldn't be such a powerful lizard self-healing potion. Without you, I might have already turned into a monster, being chased by everyone. Maybe I would have been captured by superheroes and locked up in prison by now. Su Luo nodded in agreement upon hearing this. If he hadn't intervened to stop Kurt, Kurt would have become a supervillain, Dr. Lizard. And then he would have been severely taught a lesson by Spider-Man and might have been captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. Su Luo took out a lighter and burned the formula. He looked at Kurt again and handed him a document, which was the training equipment for little Spider-Man. Build this set of training equipment by tomorrow morning. Kurt flipped through the information and nodded quickly. Okay, I can definitely build it by tomorrow morning. Su Luo was very satisfied with Kurt's efficiency. This guy, Kurt, had no flaws in terms of loyalty, scientific research ability, and execution. He was truly a rare talent. Definitely, the most important thing was the other person's loyalty. Through various micro-expressions and heartbeats, Su Luo could feel Kurt's high level of loyalty towards him. From the bottom of his heart, Kurt was grateful and admired him. That was why Su Luo valued him so much. Su Luo then took out something and handed it to Kurt, saying, "Take a look at this. Install the corresponding unnoticed cameras in the designated locations, or park the car there and place a monitor on it." Kurt took the document. It was a set of topographic maps for placing cameras. Kurt didn't ask why these cameras were being placed. He just nodded. "I understand. I will arrange for someone to do it later." For Kurt, when the boss gave him something to do, he didn't need to ask. He just needed to do it. Su Luo was very satisfied with Kurt's attitude. Then he pointed to the back of the document. In addition, go investigate the state prison in New York. I want you to investigate the super ability experiments being conducted in that prison. Find out the location of their laboratory and who is conducting this super ability experiment. Also, this investigation must be conducted in secret. We can't let anyone know that we are investigating this matter, understand? Kurt looked at the end and said, "I understand, boss. Investigating the state prison is something that will bring trouble if it leaks. Don't worry, I will send someone to secretly investigate this matter and make sure no information leaks out." Kurt assured with a firm gaze. Seeing Kurt's determined and efficient appearance, full of stability and confidence, Su Luo couldn't help but think of how he looked when they first met, depressed, introverted, and cowardly, filled with an atmosphere of pessimism and failure. Suddenly, everything seemed to have changed so much. It had to be said that since giving him hope and a new position and status, Kurt's state had been getting better and better. His inner potential had also been fully tapped into. Su Luo spoke up. "Don't you want to ask me why I'm doing all this?" Kurt smiled and said, "Whatever the boss tells me to do, I will do it. I just need to focus on doing it." Su Luo nodded and said, "All right, I'll leave these things to you." After saying that, Su Luo stood up and prepared to leave. Kurt quickly stopped Su Luo. Su Luo asked, "What's wrong? Is there something else?" Kurt sighed and said, "Boss, my new product is about to launch and face the market. I'm just a technical person, someone who's good at execution. If you give me a plan, I can quickly execute it. But when it comes to managing the company, creating more profits, and selling products, I am really not capable. You really need to find a professional manager to take care of the company. Otherwise, the company might end up in a mess." Upon hearing Kurt's words, Su Luo nodded slightly and said, "You're right. I almost forgot about the lack of management personnel in the company." He then said, "All right, I understand. I will find a company manager as soon as possible." Kurt nodded and said, "All right, I'll leave first and take care of the things on my hands." Su Luo nodded and said, "Go ahead." Before leaving, Kurt glanced at the little Spider-Man badge on Su Luo's chest. There was some sympathy in his eyes. After seeing the super-gravity training equipment, Kurt immediately realized that it was not something humans could use. Humans were not suitable for such equipment. With just a quick glance, Kurt understood that the heavyweight training equipment was meant for the electric little Spider-Man. Yes, in Kurt's mind, the little Spider-Man already had his own title, which was the electric little Spider-Man. Kurt could imagine how difficult and even painful it must be to train with such heavyweight equipment. Thinking about the small stature of the little Spider-Man, having to endure such a huge weight and train with the same intensity as the boss, Kurt felt deep sympathy. Perhaps this was the pain unique to the strong. Kurt was very fortunate that he was just an ordinary person. Otherwise, his boss might have trained him as well. Kurt sympathetically glanced at the little Spider-Man and then quickly left the meeting room. When Kurt mentioned management personnel, Su Luo thought of Norman Osborn. From the beginning, he intended to have Norman manage the company. But these past few days, he had been busy and forgot about it. Su Luo said, "Indeed, we should bring Norman out. The new product is about to be released. We can't be without someone to oversee everything." Managing the company and selling products were things that Su Luo naturally couldn't handle himself. Such matters had to be entrusted to others, and he only needed to make money effortlessly. Go back and improve the Green Goblin serum. Erase the Green Goblin persona. All right, it's changed back. Then, Su Luo walked toward the outside of the meeting room. In the depths of Hell's Kitchen, in a large underground basement, there was a coffin placed inside. The coffin slowly opened, and cold white mist emerged from it. A beautiful girl stood up from the coffin. Her hair was very short, probably only 5 or 6 centimeters long. The girl appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old. She was the host of the Beast that Su Luo had seen before. She was also the current leader of the Black Void and the Hand. Her hair had grown out, and it grew very quickly. In front of her, a group of people knelt down. There were black-clad ninjas, as well as several high-ranking members of the Hand, including the Japanese man Su Luo had seen before, escorting Kirok. She looked down at the kneeling people with indifference, like a queen. One of the high-ranking members of the Hand below said, "You have finally awakened. It has been several days since you arrived in New York. After you left, all of our people died, and the dragon bone was taken away," the high-ranking member of the Hand said through gritted teeth. The girl's eyes were indifferent as she asked, "Who killed them? Members of the true, pure society? Or the person I saw that day?" The Japanese man spoke up. "According to our intelligence, the person who killed us is mainly the mysterious person you saw that day. He almost killed all the people we left behind. He is extremely powerful." Kirok asked, "Have you found that person?" The people below shook their heads. "He is very cautious and left no traces," Kirok said. "Continue searching. Once you find him, bring him here," Kirok ordered. "Yes," Kirok continued. "The evil god needs more sacrifices." The evil god referred to in Kirok's words was the primitive demon, beast, inside her. The people below nodded, saying, "Rest assured, leader. We will offer more sacrifices to the evil god." Kirok nodded slightly and then lay back in the coffin. The coffin lid was slowly closed. Kirok muttered expressionlessly, "Where are you? The evil god needs you." After saying that, she closed her eyes. With the coffin lid closed, she completely disappeared into the cold darkness. Cars drove into New York. In one of the cars, Donald and Dr. Les sat inside. Beside them sat two strong men wearing masks, who looked almost identical. Upon closer inspection, it could be seen that these two men were clones of Wolverine. Donald said, "We have found the guy's trail." Dr. Les's eyes turned cold as he said, "Finally found him. He hid so well. We must retrieve X-24. After all, X-24 is the most perfect experiment at the moment. The others still have flaws." Sue Luo walked out of Osborne Corporation and headed towards the other side of the street. There was a supermarket over there. He was planning to buy some daily necessities to take back. Soon, he arrived at the other end of the street. "I need to buy some oyster sauce, tissues, and a new toothbrush to take back. Oh, I also need to buy a new towel to use as a replacement," Sue Luo muttered to himself. Just as he was about to enter the supermarket, a familiar voice sounded from behind him. It was a man's loud shout, "Damn it, don't run. Just because you're hiding doesn't mean we can't find you." In addition to the shout, there were hurried footsteps. The other party was quickly approaching from a distance. Sue Luo narrowed his eyes and whispered, "Donald." He muttered to himself, "I didn't expect you to be able to find me. It really surprises me. But your success this time will be a fatal mistake. You shouldn't have come looking for me." Sue Luo murmured in a barely audible voice, his eyes slightly cold as he turned around slowly. His fist was already clenched slightly. He could feel that the other person was only 7 or 8 meters away from him. But to his surprise, the burly men led by Donald rushed past Sue Luo without even looking at him. They ran towards the front, shouting, "Stop!" At the intersection ahead, the injured Captain America rushed out, running desperately, gritting his teeth and saying, "Damn it, who are you people?" Sue Luo's gaze froze for a moment as he stood still in his original position. 073 Avengers Alliance. This beam has been formed. Step 1, Man of Steel. 2, Dajong. Sue Luo clenched his fists, already prepared to throw a punch. But unexpectedly, the plot suddenly took a turn in a direction he had never imagined. Sue Luo stared blankly at the scene unfolding before him. He looked at the injured Captain America and the angry and astonished expression on the other person's face. Sue Luo was also astonished, and his mouth twitched a few times. So it turned out that the Essex Company had mistaken him for Captain America that day, and they had actually come looking for him. They even surrounded and attacked Captain America, causing him to get injured. Looking at Captain America's expression, it seemed that he still hadn't figured out what was going on. He still hadn't figured out why he was being mercilessly beaten. It had to be said that a super soldier with a shield injuring someone made it very easy for normal people to associate him with Captain America. Sue Luo was slightly stunned for a moment, but then returned to normal. "So if it turns out you were looking for Captain America, then there's no problem," Sue Luo muttered to himself. He immediately turned and walked towards the supermarket, acting as if nothing had happened. As for Captain America getting beaten up, what did it have to do with him, Sue Luo? Today, Captain America felt terrible. During this period of time, because of the Sokovia incident, their Avengers Alliance had become the target of international criticism. To avoid unnecessary disputes, they chose to stay at home temporarily, not going out and not causing any trouble. Finally, when public opinion eased up a bit, their restrictions were relaxed a little, and they could finally go out for a walk. So Captain America chose to go out and relax. But unexpectedly, as soon as he went out, he encountered a hostage situation with kidnappers. There was no choice. Captain America had to take action. He rescued the hostage and handed the kidnappers over to the police. That's how his beautiful morning was ruined. Originally, he had planned to make good use of the afternoon and find a place to relax. But unexpectedly, a group of people suddenly rushed over, disregarding martial ethics, and started punching and kicking him, an elderly man in his 80s or 90s. What's more important was that this group of people was extremely powerful, with 3 of them even surpassing ordinary people. There was no choice. Captain America had to escape. But the pursuers were too close. He couldn't shake them off at all. Up until now, Captain America still hadn't figured out what he had done to offend these guys. He just felt that this day was really terrible. In an alleyway, the people from Essex were still chasing Captain America at a fast pace. Even their 290 formed a pincer attack to intercept Captain America. Several mercenaries arrived from the front and blocked Captain America, engaging in combat with him. Someone even fired a gun at Captain America, but it was blocked by an enemy's body. Narrow spaces were not suitable for gunfights, as it was easier to harm oneself. So those people rushed forward and engaged in close combat with Captain America. Captain America gritted his teeth and threw a punch, sending one person flying, roaring, "Who are you people?" Donald rushed forward from behind and threw a punch, directly sending Captain America flying. Boom! Captain America crashed into the wall, feeling like his body was about to fall apart, in excruciating pain. Donald also went crazy, shouting, "Captain America, hand over the person you stole." Hearing this, Captain America was stunned. Immediately, he remembered the events from earlier in the morning, when he had taken the hostage from the kidnappers. He got up from the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and looked coldly at Donald. He coldly snorted, "So it turns out you bunch of bandits." He wiped away the blood from his face and said coldly, "I'm sorry, but once I've taken the person, there's no way I'll give them to you." Hearing Captain America's words, Donald laughed angrily. "Very good, truly worthy of Captain America, so arrogant. But have you considered the consequences of offending us?" He gritted his teeth, his voice icy. "You, an old man in his 80s or 90s, what do you have to do with the modern era? In this era, you're just an outdated person who can't understand. Captain America has been frozen for 70 years, plus his previous age. Isn't he just an old man in his 80s or 90s? Hearing Donald's sarcasm, Captain America's face grew colder. Donald waved his hand. "Capture this guy. We must pry the person out of his mouth." The communication between the two sides was completely on different wavelengths. But the communication was extremely smooth. The two sides communicated, but not completely. With Donald's command, a group of people rushed towards Captain America. Captain America was originally out for a rest today, so he didn't bring any weapons. He could only fight hand-to-hand with the opponent. Fortunately, in this narrow area, it's not suitable for a gunfight. Otherwise, he would be at a great disadvantage. Captain America directly knocked down several mercenaries with punches and kicks. At this moment, the two Wolverine clones rushed forward and attacked Captain America. In the hands of the two clones, bone claws emerged instead of steel claws. BCCI, there's no way. After all, adamantium is not a product of the mainland. Injecting so much adamantium into X-24 before has already depleted their inventory. So currently, there isn't enough adamantium to inject into the new clones. Moreover, for Dr. Rice, these two new clones are far from being as perfect as X-24. Whether it's reaction ability or self-healing ability, they are weaker. So there's no need to inject precious and scarce adamantium into defective products. With the addition of the two Wolverine clones, Captain America instantly found himself at a disadvantage. In an instant, he was scratched several times, causing Captain America to groan in pain. Donald said coldly, "Captain America, return the person you took. Otherwise, my men will only leave more wounds on your body." Captain America said coldly, "You can forget about getting the person from me." With one punch, he knocked down one of the clones. With one kick, he directly broke one of the clone's bone claws. Immediately, a painful wail rang out. At this moment, Donald's iron fist came again. Bang! Captain America was once again sent flying. He fell heavily to the ground, the pain causing him to groan. Donald sneered, "You're finished." After saying that, he was ready to rush up and add to the opponent's pain. But at this moment, whoosh! A sturdy figure shot down from the sky, descending with a kick that sent Donald flying. Then, the sound of mechanical pistons rang out. A figure of steel fell to the ground. "Sorry, I just attended a high-end banquet, so I'm late." The newcomer turned around and shrugged. The newcomer was none other than Iron Man, Tony Stark. Seeing the newcomer, Captain America, who was struggling to get up from the ground, grinned. Tony looked at Captain America and said, "Oh, it seems our Mr. Steve is in a bit of a mess." Captain America rolled his eyes impatiently. If you were ambushed by so many people, you would be just as miserable. Tony chuckled arrogantly. I wouldn't even give these guys a chance to get close to me. Tony waved his hand and a shield flew out. I brought your shield. He turned to look at Donald and the others across from him and said to Captain America, "Tell me, how do we solve this?" Captain America walked to his side, and the two stood side by side in the alley, facing the enemies together. He smirked. "Send these criminals to jail." Tony clenched his fist. "That's a good suggestion. I'll take it." Donald saw this scene and gritted his teeth. "Iron Man, this has nothing to do with you. You should stay away and not get involved." Tony smiled. "Sorry, I just like to meddle in other people's business." On the main road outside, Dr. Lai watched the situation inside the alley through the cameras carried by the frontline soldiers. He saw Iron Man suddenly rushing out and interfering. He immediately clenched his fist, his eyes cold. "Sure enough, Iron Man, you're involved too. The high-tech products Captain America used last time must have been given by you." Dr. Lai instantly thought of the pulse weapon used by the other party last time. Such a small pulse weapon contained immense energy and belonged to cutting-edge technology. At that time, he suspected that the thing was made by Iron Man. After all, among Captain America's friends, there happened to be a technological genius. He clenched his fist. "So, the Avengers Alliance has been eyeing us for a long time." His eyes were cold. "You planned everything, took X-24 from my hands, just to obtain our genetic weapon technology. The Avengers Alliance, the superhero organization, the savior organization, all resorting to these dark means behind the scenes. We are despicable, and so are you. There are only despicable people in this world. Where are the noble ones?" Dr. Lai said coldly, "Avengers, we have a grudge now." Inside the alley, the battle broke out. The two sides fought each other. After Captain America took the shield, his combat power instantly increased. With Iron Man's support, the situation instantly reversed. Donald and the others were at a disadvantage. Bang, bang, bang. Captain America's shield bounced in the air several times, knocking several people surrounding Iron Man away. Captain America smiled, using the returning shield. "No need to thank me." Iron Man raised his hand. A beam cannon blasted away the enemies behind Captain America. Iron Man smirked. "No need to thank me." Then, he kicked and sent Donald, who was charging towards him, flying. Iron Man looked at Captain America. "See, I never give them a chance to get close to me." Swoosh! Just as Iron Man finished speaking, a pair of bone claws scratched his armor. A slap in the face, causing Iron Man's mouth to twitch a few times, his face slightly embarrassed. Captain America looked at it and shook his head. Iron Man angrily kicked the opponent away. Donald saw this and immediately realized that they were no match. He gritted his teeth. Retreat. Immediately, Donald threw a flash grenade. The group of people quickly ran towards the mouth of the alley. Iron Man wanted to chase, but was stopped by Donald's firearms. In the end, when Iron Man and Captain America chased out, those people had completely disappeared. It seems they left by car. Iron Man looked at Captain America's injuries. "You need to get treated for your injuries. I'll call S.H.I.E.L.D. to investigate these people." On the road, in a car, Donald clenched his fist. "Avengers Alliance, you have completely made enemies with Essex." Shortly after, Su Luo returned home. At the moment, Xiao was taking online classes in the living room. A specialized teacher was providing academic guidance to Xiao Yi, allowing her to learn more comprehensive knowledge. All of this was arranged by Clow for Xiao Yi. After all, Xiao Yi was at the age to attend school. But this time, Xiao Yi was drooping her head, indicating that attending classes was quite painful for her. Seeing Su Luo approaching, Xiao Yi's eyes lit up. "Big brother." She quickly stood up, ready to run over. Clow immediately held Xiao Yi back and said sternly, "Don't try to slack off. You're currently in class, so focus on your studies." Hearing her father's words, Xiao Yi sat back down with a dejected look and continued her class. Su Luo instantly thought of Little Spider-Man. Little Spider-Man also needed to attend classes. Arrangements were made for it as well. Soon after, he greeted the two and went downstairs. He first went to see Green Goblin. Green Goblin looked at Su Luo and grinned. "Have you found a way to eliminate me?" He couldn't help but laugh. I've already told you, you can't possibly find a way to eliminate me. The Green Goblin formula is already perfect, and you want to continue optimizing it. It's impossible. Delusional. Green Goblin spoke. If you want to eliminate me, there's only one way, and that is to eliminate Norman as well. Suluo calmly said, Don't worry, you'll be gone soon. Suluo liked people who talk tough the most. He said to Norman, Soon, I will save you, completely free you from Green Goblin's control, and then you will be able to safely leave here. As the price for saving you, you will work for me next. Deal. Green Goblin's face showed a struggling expression. Then Norman regained control of a part of his body and struggled to speak. Agree. Deal. Please, eliminate him. Hearing Norman's words, Su Luo nodded in satisfaction. He immediately turned and left. He returned to his own biological laboratory, but he didn't directly deal with the Green Goblin formula. Instead, he opened the computer in front of him and directly invaded the public surveillance system. He clicked on a few of them. Suddenly, several surveillance screens appeared on his computer. Soon after, a muscular man with dark skin appeared in the camera. Su Luo murmured, Hello, Luke Cage. Because these cameras were public cameras, so what could be accessed was actually quite limited. So Su Luo had Kurt handle the cameras to better monitor the man in the videos. Luke Cage, who had a body as hard as steel, because Su Luo was going to replicate the opponent's ability of a steel body in his Superman plan's first step. He was looking for an opportunity to replicate the opponent's ability. The reason why he sent Kurt to the New York prison, it was because Luke Cage obtained this special ability during the superhuman experiment in the prison. Su Luo wanted to know if there were any relevant data in the laboratory. After all, if there were experimental data, if there were raw data, it would be easier and faster to study. Su Luo planned to obtain relevant data from both Luke Cage himself and the laboratory. 074, the training effect has skyrocketed. Information in a New York prison. Su Luo is not prepared to act rashly, because he doesn't know much about Luke Cage's strength. Without a clear understanding of the opponent's strength, Su Luo will not act recklessly. Unfortunately, Luke Cage is not a popular hero, so Su Luo's knowledge of him is very limited. His understanding of Luke Cage mostly comes from the information he took from HYDRA's database. He only knows that Luke Cage has an indestructible body, possesses great strength, and is known as a superhuman. And it is because of the superhuman experiment at the New York State Penitentiary that he obtained his super abilities. The only positive understanding of Luke Cage's strength in HYDRA's data is that he once easily lifted a medium-sized truck. The total weight of a medium-sized truck is 6 to 14 tons. And Luke Cage can easily lift a medium-sized truck. This shows that the opponent's strength is very strong, even stronger than his current strength. So, Su Luo still needs to further strengthen his own power. In this way, he will have more options. Su Luo looked at the surveillance. Soon, Luke Cage disappeared from the screen. What can be recorded by public surveillance is ultimately limited. Only when Kurt installs the surveillance, he will be able to see more things. Only then can he better understand Luke Cage's situation. Only then can he find opportunities more easily. Definitely, replicating Luke Cage's tough body is just the first step. After obtaining a tough body, how to continue upgrading and obtaining an even tougher physique is the core content. But all of this must be based on obtaining Luke Cage's abilities. After seeing that the surveillance had no significant value, Su Luo left. He went to eliminate Green Goblin first. He likes dealing with people who talk tough. As for Little Spider-Man, he wanted to follow Su Luo, but Su Luo directly found some elementary level online courses for it to learn. Most of them are elementary school courses teaching Little Spider-Man to learn human language and some basic knowledge. So on a desk, Little Spider-Man was earnestly watching the online courses and studying hard. His eyes were fixed on the screen. Sometimes, a few legs were gesturing on the desk, learning human writing. Seeing Little Spider-Man's serious appearance, Su Luo was very satisfied. He also started optimizing the Green Goblin serum. In front of him were some scattered pieces of paper. They were filled with equations. Actually, before this, during his free time, Su Luo had done some calculations on the Green Goblin serum. He immediately started working at his desk. While calculating, he picked up the nearby biological experimental equipment and conducted tests. Because he had some foundation before, Su Luo's movements were quite fast, coupled with his previous exposure to two similar level serum formulas, the Super Soldier serum and a Lizard serum. So Su Luo had some experience in this regard. After about 2 hours, Su Luo completed the optimized serum for Green Goblin. This optimized serum would wash away Norman's Green Goblin persona while also reducing some of Norman's strength. Definitely, if Su Luo spent more time, he might be able to create a more perfect optimized serum, but it was unnecessary. After all, for Su Luo, the biggest role of this serum was to eliminate Norman's Green Goblin persona. Besides, this optimized serum had a drawback. That is, while washing away the Green Goblin persona, it would cause intense pain to the body. Especially for the eliminated alter ego, they would feel even more intense pain. Definitely, in Su Luo's eyes, this drawback was not a drawback. After all, seeing the Green Goblin persona in pain made him quite happy. Norman was going to suffer a bit, compared to being controlled by the Green Goblin and having someone else take over his life. Su Luo believed that suffering a bit was still worth it. Soon after, a bottle of brand new yellow serum appeared before Su Luo's eyes. Su Luo nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. He picked up the bottle of serum and walked towards Green Goblin's operating room. Tonight, he would deal with this Green Goblin guy. If initially it was because he wanted to find a reliable manager for his company, now I just want Green Goblin to disappear. Soon, he arrived at Green Goblin's operating room. Seeing Su Luo come in, Green Goblin smiled and said, "So you still haven't developed the optimized serum? A person should know their limits." Su Luo spoke up. "Norman, the thing has been developed." After speaking, he revealed the vial of serum. This thing can eliminate the Green Goblin persona within you, but it also has drawbacks. It will weaken your power, and most importantly, it will be very painful. Do you want to use it? Upon hearing this, Green Goblin's pupils contracted, and his voice became sharper. "You think you can deceive me, right?" He laughed sharply. "How could you have developed an optimized serum? You just want to see me scared, don't you? I'm telling you, your tricks won't work on me." A struggling expression appeared on Green Goblin's face. I want to use it." Su Luo nodded upon hearing this. Then he walked towards Green Goblin, while pouring the serum into the syringe in his hand. Looking at Su Luo's calm face, a sense of unease rose in Green Goblin's heart. When Su Luo raised the syringe, Green Goblin finally felt a hint of fear. He felt that the other party was not joking. He instantly became a little panicked, wanting to struggle, but his whole body was firmly restrained. He shouted, "No, no, no. You can't inject me. Let's talk again. I can do things for you, serve you. I can even work like a slave for you." Upon Green Goblin's begging, a hint of satisfaction and joy flashed in Su Luo's eyes. But he did not stop his actions. Su Luo didn't want someone like Green Goblin, who was full of thoughts and could rebel at any time. Pust! The syringe struck Norman's body. A painful howl rang out. Green Goblin's face twisted in agony. Looking at Green Goblin's painful appearance, Su Luo's mood became somewhat relieved. Not long after, the painful screams disappeared. Norman lay on the workbench, covered in sweat, his face pale, his chest heaving violently. Su Luo spoke. "How do you feel?" Norman showed a weak expression. "Although it was painful, I can feel a sense of relief throughout my body. There's no longer anyone inside me fighting for control of my body." Su Luo nodded. "Very good. Rest for a while, and then you can leave. In the future, you will start working for me. I want to return to Osborne, manage it, strengthen it, and make it earn more resources for me." Upon hearing Su Luo's words, Norman gave a bitter smile. The current Osborne is in a difficult situation. If we want to recover and restore it, it will probably take a lot of time. Su Luo shrugged. "You'll find out when you go back." Norman nodded. On the other side, Kurt also began to take action, installing cameras. Definitely, this kind of installation is extremely discreet. In addition, Kurt also started arranging people to inquire about the New York State Penitentiary. Kurt took over the company's intelligence resources and is now getting the hang of it in this area. Outside the streets and alleys, a pair of eyes stared at the backs of Captain America and Iron Man as they left. That person was none other than Zemo. Zemo looked at the two who had a good relationship, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Keep laughing. When the wall of brothership collapses, you won't be able to laugh anymore. At the same time, inside the New York State Penitentiary, in an office, two men sat facing each other, one of them wearing the uniform of a high-level prison guard, the warden of this prison. The man across from the director spoke up. "Have you found that mutant and indestructible guy?" The director's face turned grim. "That guy escaped and definitely went into hiding. We still haven't found him." The man squinted his eyes. "We must find him. His condition has significant research value. We can conduct in-depth research, dig deeper." The director nodded. "I understand, and I've also established connections with the gang members inside the prison," the director added. "I believe we won't take long to find him," the man said. Upon hearing this, the man nodded, his expression relaxing. He said, "Prepare to destroy the research materials about him from your end." The director nodded slightly. "Understood. I will have my subordinates delete those research materials." The next day, Su Luo woke up early, feeling refreshed and energized. Yesterday's exhaustion vanished, and his whole body was filled with strength. Su Luo clenched his fist. "Today, let's test the effectiveness of the new training." He murmured, "I must quickly increase my strength, otherwise I won't be able to handle many things." He snapped his fingers. Whoosh! Soon, a small figure hurriedly ran over and darted into Su Luo's room. It quickly jumped onto Su Luo's desk and stood skillfully. Its two big eyes stared at Su Luo obediently, like a well-behaved little dog. The one who came was Little Spider-Man. Su Luo said, "Get ready. We'll leave soon for training." Upon hearing Su Luo's words, Little Spider-Man nodded eagerly, full of excitement. It quickly raised its front legs, showing off its biceps. Su Luo saw this and nodded in satisfaction. "Very good. Your mental state is excellent, just like it should be." Immediately, Su Luo finished washing up and then took Little Spider-Man to the company, entering the training room. Inside the spacious training room, in addition to Su Luo's equipment, there were also some slightly smaller training devices. After explaining how to use the training devices to Little Spider-Man, Su Luo put a set of electric shock devices on it to help it quickly improve its strength. After putting on the shock devices, Little Spider-Man tied a red string around its head, its eyes filled with fighting spirit. It raised its small feet, cheering itself on. Then, with a proud and determined stride, it walked towards the training device. Su Luo also put on his own electroshock device and began training. Thus, the two figures, one big and one small, started exercising vigorously in the training room. Under the electroshock devices, Su Luo could feel that his muscle strength had become even stronger. It also increased the endurance of his muscles. He continued training. Boom! He constantly lifted heavy equipment like small mountains. On the other side, there was also a rumbling sound. Little Spider-Man began its own training journey. Time flew by. Not long after, inside the spacious room, lay two exhausted individuals, panting heavily like dead dogs. One big, one small. Su Luo looked at Little Spider-Man, who had a red headband tied around its head, and nodded in satisfaction. Very good, you little guy. Well, Little Spider-Man also gasped for breath, its eyes filled with joy. With great effort, it tremblingly raised one of its slender front legs, indicating victory. Seeing this, Su Luo smiled slightly. Su Luo looked at his own hands. Next, I will check how much my strength has increased. Through the stimulation of the electric current, I can clearly feel that this training has had excellent results. There should be a significant improvement. After resting for a while, Su Luo and Little Spider-Man had their meal. I want to test it. Su Luo punched the testing device. The numbers on it rapidly climbed. Soon, then stopped. 17 tons. Seeing this number, Su Luo finally showed a smile. Very good. The electric shock effect is indeed extraordinary. After this training, I directly increased by 1.5 tons. Compared to last time, it tripled. The electric current stimulation on all-round muscles is very effective. If this continues, in 6 days, I will increase my strength by a whole 9 tons. In 1 month, I will increase my strength by a total of 40 tons. My strength will reach 47 tons. In just 2 or 3 months, I will reach the level of 100 tons. Su Luo's eyes were full of anticipation. He looked at the little Spider-Man beside him and said, "You should give it a try too." The little Spider-Man nodded quickly. Taking a deep breath, he punched the sandbag. Bang! A loud impact. The data started to soar. 1.2 tons. Seeing this, Su Luo nodded slightly. Good. You increased by 0.2 tons, which is equivalent to a 1/5 increase in your own strength. Not bad. It seems that the electric shock effect is also helpful for you. The little Spider-Man nodded quickly. In its eyes, everything Su Luo said was right. It just needed to nod. At the same time, Norman also returned to the company. He had been appointed as the company's general manager by Su Luo. After entering the company, he learned about the existence of the trauma medicine and was instantly shocked. At the same time, he also understood Su Luo's confidence in being able to sustain the company. Such a powerful trauma medicine, as long as it is managed well, is a golden goose that lays golden eggs. Soon, Norman gathered the personnel from the marketing department and prepared to arrange the launch of the product. They planned to launch the marketing within a week. 1 week later, the product would successfully hit the market. On the other side, Kurt saw that someone had finally taken over the position of the general manager and breathed a sigh of relief. So he became even more focused on helping Su Luo find information from the laboratory. In the evening, Kurt found Su Luo. Su Luo sat in the back seat of Kurt's car. Su Luo spoke. "What did you find out?" Kurt replied, "I have found out about the experimental situation in the prison you mentioned. That prison is actually controlled by a high-ranking military officer. They are conducting experiments on super soldiers using prisoners in the prison. As long as they voluntarily undergo the superhuman experiment that reproduces the past super soldier program, they could be released from prison in advance. But according to insider information, most of the people died in the experiments and a few were disabled. And there is one person named Carl who is the only one who didn't get injured and obtained a completely new ability. During the experiment, a prisoner who was hostile to him broke into the laboratory and wanted to harm Carl, but accidentally accelerated the chemical reaction on Carl's body, resulting in changes in his entire cell structure. The laboratory is deep inside the prison. Carl is Luke Cage's real name. Su Luo nodded. "I understand. New York National Prison." A figure is approaching rapidly. Soon, he arrived outside the high walls. Su Luo, wearing a mask, murmured, "So Luke Cage's data is inside here?" He raised his hand, and cobwebs flew out, and he instantly flew towards the high wall. 075 infiltrating the New York State Prison. Luke Cage's experiment. During the process of rapid flight, Su Luo quickly switched his breathing mode and entered a state of silent secret technique. In an instant, the surrounding sound around Su Luo instantly decreased to the extreme. The tearing air sounds also instantly disappeared. He floated towards the high wall like a ghost. Using cobweb, Su Luo silently landed on the passage on top of the high wall. As a state prison, the guards here were extremely strict. In the passage of the high wall, there would be a watchtower at every interval. There were also many huge light columns constantly scanning. Inside the watchtower were fully armed guards, paying attention to everything in the prison. Inside the prison, there were also specialized patrol teams. They were there to prevent anyone from escaping the prison and also to prevent anyone from secretly infiltrating the prison. Just as Su Luo landed, at that moment, the prison's searchlight emitted a huge light column and swept towards Su Luo. Once Su Luo was caught in the sweep, he would be completely exposed to the guards. There are so many lights. Su Luo looked at the numerous light columns in the prison. He quickly raised his hand. Whoosh! Cobweb shot into the top of the nearby watchtower. His whole person instantly turned into an arrow and shot towards the back of the tower. The huge light column quickly chased after Su Luo's figure from behind, just as it was about to catch up to Su Luo. Su Luo accurately and without error landed on the back of the tower. The huge light column swept over the front of the tower, but didn't find any trace of a person. Below the tower, 2 guards stood. One guard looked towards the direction where Su Luo had just disappeared, furrowing his brows slightly. Was there someone over there just now? The other guard glanced at the long passage, then looked at both sides of the wall, finding no trace. He said, "There's no one there, it's all empty. We're in the New York State prison here, with such tight security. Could there still be someone who wants to come and try their luck in 13-3? Continue monitoring the prison. These guys inside are not to be underestimated. We must keep a close eye on them. Otherwise, losing our job is a small matter, but losing our lives would be a big loss." The guard nodded. "You're right. We can't risk our lives for a few $1,000. We have to be serious." Their gaze once again followed the searchlights, surveying the situation inside the prison. Above their heads, Su Luo climbed to the side of the tower tip. He looked ahead. The state prison was still very large. A large number of red-tiled, gray-walled prison buildings were densely scattered, along with some office buildings or residences for prison staff. Definitely, these houses were all long and low, like factories. There were basically no tall buildings, and 3 floors were the maximum height. Inside, there were various iron fences, specifically enclosing a designated activity area for prisoners. Su Luo looked at the rows of houses ahead and murmured to himself, "So, where exactly is the laboratory?" Kurt only found out that the laboratory was deep inside the prison, but he didn't find a specific location. Su Luo decided to go in and ask someone. However, he didn't plan to ask the guards on duty, mainly because these guys would report their situation to each other every now and then, and they were mostly in groups. It would be difficult for him to make a move. His target was the resting patrol guards. These patrol guards patrolled the entire prison every day and definitely knew more than others. He looked up at the entire prison again. The prison buildings were low, so the watchtowers on the high walls could basically oversee the entire prison. If he came during the day, without the cover of darkness, he would definitely be exposed in this environment. Even at night, with the constant passing of the searchlights and the patrol teams on the roads, it would be very easy to be exposed. But there was an advantage to this, which was that Su Luo could quickly familiarize himself with the structure of the entire prison and the surveillance system. As the searchlights continued to patrol, Su Luo memorized the timing and trajectory of each searchlight in his mind. At the same time, as the searchlights illuminated the surroundings, Su Luo also memorized the terrain of the entire prison, the number of patrol teams, their routes, and their patrol times. After completing all of this, as Su Luo's brain spun rapidly, an identical operating prison also appeared in his mind, clearly carved out. He could accurately calculate when each searchlight's trajectory would shine on a certain area, when each patrol team would appear in a certain area at a certain time. After completing all of this, Su Luo leaped down from the blind spot of the guard's field of vision and landed on the ground of the prison. In his mind, based on the prison operation model, he instantly calculated more than a dozen safe ways to enter the prison. He chose one of them and ran towards the depths of the prison. Based on what I saw, there are 2 buildings that are slightly different from the factory-style prison cells, more compact and refined. That should be the dormitory for prison personnel. As long as I find the patrolling guards there, it will be fine. Su Luo's murmurs were barely audible. Soon, Su Luo arrived in front of the 2 special buildings. They were long, 2-story buildings. Su Luo climbed onto the wall and looked inside. Some rooms had people, while others didn't. But without exception, the rooms with people were occupied by only one person. These houses were independent dormitories. Looking at the sets of prison guard uniforms hanging on the walls inside the houses, Su Luo was completely certain that this was the dormitory for prison guards. Su Luo chose one of them and carefully sneaked in. Before entering, he saw a constantly rotating camera above the corridor. He took out a small USB drive from his body. This USB drive was specifically used by Su Luo to disable partial surveillance, making the surveillance system loop playback footage of empty areas. At the same time, this USB drive could also allow Su Luo to infiltrate the prison's intranet and invade their surveillance system. Seeing the camera turn towards another direction, Su Luo rushed up and leaped onto the ceiling. He shot the USB drive into the camera. After a moment, the red light on the USB drive turned green, indicating a successful disablement. Su Luo took out a special phone and glanced at it. He had already infiltrated the prison's surveillance system through the prison's intranet. He accessed all the surveillance footage, but didn't find anything unusual. After watching them, Su Luo put the phone back and landed on the ground. In the corridor, at each doorway, there was a shoe rack with prison guard shoes on them. Su Luo's gaze quickly scanned the area. Compared to indoor prison guards, the shoes of patrolling guards would be more worn and covered in mud from outside the buildings. So by just looking at those shoes, he could distinguish between patrolling guards and indoor guards. Soon, he found some rooms belonging to patrolling guards. He pried open one of them and sneaked in. After entering, Su Luo saw a middle-aged white man lying on the bed, sound asleep. He felt around his waist and pulled out a gun. The cold muzzle was placed against the white man's forehead. The prison guard continued to sleep soundly. Su Luo's eyes twitched slightly. Is his vigilance so poor? He released his sound suppression technique. He gently tapped the man's face a few times. The snoring continued to reverberate loudly. There was no sign of waking up at all. Instead, he mumbled incoherently, "I choose the one with big breasts. I kiss." The prison guard lasciviously licked his lips and leaned towards the air, as if kissing. Su Luo remained expressionless. Smack! He slapped the prison guard's face. The guard suddenly woke up. What came into his sight was a gun pressed against his forehead. Feeling the coldness of the muzzle, a hint of fear instantly enveloped the guard's mind, and cold sweat broke out on his back. Then, a calm and low voice sounded. "I ask you answer. If you make any loud noise or cause any disturbance, you know what will happen." Su Luo's finger moved closer to the trigger. The guard saw this and quickly nodded. "Tell me, where's the laboratory in your prison?" The guard shook his head and hurriedly whispered, "I don't know. I haven't heard of any laboratory. We only have a gym, an exercise yard for prisoners, and a workshop for prisoner labor reform. There's no laboratory here. This is a prison, not a laboratory." Su Luo continued. "Then are there any hidden or unusual places inside the prison?" Prison guard shakes his head. "There is no such place in my patrol area. I patrol the perimeter of the prison," the prison guard said. "Our patrol and guard duties are divided into two types. One is patrolling the perimeter, and the other is patrolling the core area." Su Luo asked, "Who patrols this area?" "The dormitory at number 123 on the right side when you go out." Upon hearing this, Su Luo immediately knocked the other person unconscious. He quickly found another prison guard from dormitory number 23 and used the same method. This time, the answer from the prison guard did not disappoint Su Luo. The prison guard said, "Well, there is one, and that is the independent building of the prison warden. We don't patrol that area. It's a place that is not disturbed by anyone." He immediately asked for the location of the warden's independent building. After completing these tasks, he knocked the prison guard unconscious again. Then he sneaked out of the dormitory building and ran towards the warden's building. Soon, Su Luo appeared in front of the warden's building. The building had 3 floors and was a standalone villa. The building was surrounded by surveillance cameras. The number of cameras far exceeded that of other areas. Most importantly, Su Luo could clearly see that there were some fully armed soldiers patrolling inside the building. Yes, they were not prison guards, but real soldiers from the southern region. They were wearing military uniforms and carrying standard rifles. After observing this, Su Luo said, "So there are soldiers stationed here. It seems that this is the location of the laboratory. It's a 3-story building. I don't know the exact location of the laboratory." He carefully looked around and found that only the ground floor had patrols, while the second and third floors had no patrols. Only the ground floor has patrols, which means that the laboratory is either on the ground floor or downstairs. Before entering, Su Luo took out his phone from his pocket. He directly disabled the surveillance in this area. In addition, Su Luo discovered that the surveillance inside the warden's building was on a separate internal network that was not connected to the entire prison's internal network. Therefore, he couldn't remotely hack into the surveillance inside the warden's building. After disabling the surveillance, he activated his stealth technique, sprinted all the way, avoiding the sweeping lights and the sight of the patrolling guards inside the building. Finally, he arrived outside the building. He immediately entered the building and came to a surveillance station. He inserted a USB drive into the computer again. He successfully hacked into the local network of this place. He accessed the surveillance again. Instantly, the screens displayed one surveillance after another. Su Luo found an empty room with no one inside, crawled onto the ceiling, and started browsing through the surveillance footage. Suddenly, Su Luo discovered an area that seemed to be an experimental zone. The experimental zone was quite large, with a huge experimental hall surrounded by independent experimental rooms. At the moment, the entire experimental hall was completely quiet, with only one person seemingly on duty. Sometimes he flipped through a notebook, and sometimes he played with his phone. The structure of the entire laboratory was completely different from that of the ground. Su Luo understood that this laboratory area should be underground. "How do I go down?" Su Luo murmured. From the surveillance, he couldn't see any elevators or passages leading downstairs. This indicated that the passage leading downstairs was hidden. Just at that moment, he saw something in the surveillance. A person wearing ordinary clothes walked towards the storage room and eventually entered the storage room. Soon, this person appeared inside the laboratory. Seeing this, Su Luo's eyes brightened. The storage room is the passage downstairs. The person in ordinary clothes immediately changed into a white research uniform in the changing room and walked towards the person on duty. The person on duty also brightened upon seeing the approaching person. She quickly picked up her phone and stood up. "You finally came. I can finally go off duty and go home to get a good sleep." After speaking, she walked towards a new person on duty. The new person on duty smiled and said, "You can go back. I'll take over here. Goodbye." The two greeted each other. The person off duty walked quickly towards the elevator and soon got on. The person on duty came to the control panel and sat down. He looked at the notebook on the table and said, "This guy forgot to bring his notebook." He immediately put the notebook in the drawer. He then started playing with his phone. Su Luo saw this. He quickly walked towards the storage room. Soon, he entered the storage room. It was empty inside and nothing could be seen, but he could hear the sound of an elevator coming up behind a wall. He quickly crawled onto the ceiling of that wall. Soon, ding, the wall suddenly opened, revealing an elevator inside. The person off duty walked out of it excitedly. Clack, clack, clack. High heels made crisp sounds. Su Luo quickly entered the elevator and lay on it. The elevator doors closed slowly. Su Luo pressed the button for the basement floor. Soon, the elevator arrived at the first floor. With a beep sound, the person on duty quickly turned his head and looked up, saying, "Did he come back to get his notebook?" As a result, the elevator was empty and the doors closed slowly. The person on duty twitched at the corner of his mouth and said, "Did this guy make a mistake?" He shook his head, lowered his head, and continued to look at his phone. When the person on duty withdrew his gaze and the elevator was about to close, a hand reached into the gap between the elevator doors. The elevator doors opened again slowly. A figure quietly climbed out from above the elevator. Su Luo looked at the laboratory in front of him, his eyes gleaming. Finally, he entered. He leaped onto the ceiling and quickly and silently rushed towards the person on duty. He arrived above the person's head. Then he let go of his hands and feet. Whoosh! He landed directly behind the person. The person felt a gust of wind behind him. He turned his head and immediately saw a figure dressed in black with a mask. His scalp tingled and his whole body trembled. His hand instantly moved to the alarm next to him. Su Luo raised his hand and cobwebs flew out, directly binding the person's hand to the table, rendering him immobile. Su Luo took out a gun with one hand and aimed it at the person's forehead. A gun has more deterrence power against ordinary people. "Shut up, or you'll die." The Super Soldier program. Is it here where a prisoner named Carl obtained an ability? The person quickly nodded. Yes. A look of joy flashed in Su Luo's eyes. 076, there is a back door to go. But who is a decent person to go through the front door? Very good. Su Luo immediately put the gun back on his waist. Facing the other person's mouth, he raised his hand. The person on duty quickly said, "No," before he could finish speaking. His mouth was sealed by a specially designed cobweb. Immediately, more cobwebs were sprayed out, sticking the other person's body. After completing these actions, he quickly turned on the computer on the control panel. Suddenly, the screens in front of him instantly lit up. Su Luo quickly typed on the keyboard. His eyes focused on the computers in front of him, searching for information about Carl's experiments. But soon, Su Luo frowned, because he couldn't find any experimental data related to Carl. Inside the computer, there were indeed experimental data. There were a large amount of experimental data, specifically related to the restoration of the super soldier serum. What's going on? There's no experimental data on Carl. Could it be that they changed the name or used another code? Su Luo immediately began searching for successful experimental cases or cases of abnormalities. Soon, these cases were filtered out. Su Luo quickly looked at these cases. He read quickly, selecting rapidly, his brain working at full speed. His eyes moved rapidly, flashing back and forth, looking somewhat terrifying. The researcher next to him looked at the screens in front of him, which were filled with rapidly changing images. Watching those constantly changing and switching images, the researcher quickly felt dizzy and nauseous. He quickly closed his eyes, suppressing the feeling of his stomach churning. Damn it, what is this guy doing? Making so many screens constantly switch and fast forward. Can he even see it? FK. I almost threw up from watching it. He doesn't know that too fast switching of camera angles can make people uncomfortable, not to mention so many screens. FK. Rapidly switching camera angles can cause damage to the brain. Damn it. There are specialized optic nerves in the eyes to perceive motion. These motion-sensing organs are very sensitive, transmitting the motion information they perceive to the central nervous system. Rapidly switching camera angles can make these sensitive organs feel uncomfortable, causing strain on the nerves. Then the central nervous system will cause a feeling of discomfort, such as dizziness and nausea. In severe cases, it can cause injury. So the person on duty quickly closed his eyes, asking people to take a break. After taking a short break and returning to normal, he opened his eyes. After opening his eyes, what he saw made his eyes widen. The screens in front were still constantly changing, rapidly switching, and the figure next to him, as steady as a rock, his hands constantly moving, and his head focused on the screens in front. That focused appearance instantly made the person on duty's scalp tingle. This guy isn't affected at all. What the hell is he? Is he even human? How can his brain and nerves withstand such terrifying visual changes? Su Luo quickly scanned through those videos. Still, he didn't find any research data related to Luke Cage. What's going on? Su Luo frowned as he looked at the screens in front of him. Could they have deleted the data? But it's difficult to delete data. Everything leaves traces. Su Luo murmured. Su Luo quickly typed out codes, starting to recover the completely deleted data. He quickly checked the deleted data, but still gained nothing. In the local database, there is absolutely no research material related to Luke Cage. How could this be? Didn't Luke Cage conduct experiments here? If he did, how could there be no data left behind? He stopped what he was doing and looked at the duty officer beside him. The mysterious person suddenly looked at him, and the duty officer shivered. Su Luo pulled the cobweb off the person's mouth and said, "Didn't Carl conduct experiments here? Why is there no relevant experimental data of his here?" The duty officer said with grievance, "Just now, when you asked me about Carl, I actually wanted to tell you. The hard drive containing Carl's research data was taken by the warden to be destroyed not long ago. It was said to be a request from above. You came at a very unfortunate time. I was just about to mention this matter, but you sealed my mouth." Su Luo's gaze paused for a moment upon hearing this. Immediately, smack, the duty officer received a slap. Su Luo said, "If you had just spoken faster, I wouldn't have wasted so much time." The duty officer was confused. What kind of person is this? It's all because you move too fast. Who can keep up with your speed? Seeing the duty officer's eyes bulging, Su Luo calmly stared at him. The duty officer immediately drooped, swallowing his grievances. What kind of person is this? Upon hearing the duty officer's words, Su Luo frowned. Damn it, these guys actually destroyed Luke Cage's data. It seems they were afraid of the data falling into someone else's hands. They are really cautious. Su Luo pondered for a moment. No, the data shouldn't be completely deleted. For a situation like Luke Cage's, the military cannot afford not to research it. It's a huge attraction for them. They must still want to study this thing. Since they want to study it, they wouldn't completely delete the data. There must be a backup in the hands of the military. Since they have a copy, the copy in the prison is unnecessary to keep. So they would order it to be destroyed. Upon realizing this, Su Luo had a clue. He looked at the duty officer and asked, "Who is the person behind the collaboration with the prison? Which person from the military?" The duty officer said with a sad face, "That's something I don't know. The entire collaboration was coordinated by the warden with the people above. We small fries don't know these things." Su Luo said, "Where's the warden?" The duty officer quickly replied, "He lives upstairs. But tonight, the warden has already gone out. He goes out every weekend night, living it up." Upon hearing this, Su Luo knocked the duty officer unconscious. In other words, I need to pry the person behind the warden from a warden's mouth, and then find a way to obtain the data. Su Luo furrowed his brows slightly. He took out his phone and dialed Kurt's number using a special encrypted satellite channel. "Boss, what do you need me to do?" Kurt's voice came through the phone. "I want you to find out the warden's current location," Su Luo said. "You asked me to investigate the prison, so I've been keeping an eye on the important personnel of the prison recently. At the moment, the warden has gone to a high-end club, seems to be conducting a transaction with someone." Su Luo keenly caught the word transaction and suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. He quickly asked, "What is the warden's character like?" Kurt quickly replied, "He is the emperor of the New York prison. He rules this prison with an iron fist. This prison is also quite important, so he has gained a lot from it and has also established powerful connections. He is a presence that cannot be ignored." Upon hearing this, Su Luo narrowed his eyes slightly. He thought of a possibility. The prison warden may not have destroyed the information, but instead sold it. Definitely, this is just Su Luo's speculation. However, Su Luo is prepared to test it himself. "Send me his location." "Okay, boss." Putting away his phone, Su Luo immediately headed towards the elevator. Just at that moment, ding, the sound of the elevator arriving rang out. Su Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as he looked towards the elevator. At the same time, his feet burst into action, and he rushed towards the elevator at an extremely fast speed. The elevator doors hadn't opened yet. Inside, the voice of the researcher who was leaving work jokingly sounded. "Huh, I forgot my laptop. I'll come back to get it. You weren't doing anything shady in there, right?" The elevator slowly opened. Inside the elevator, a smile appeared. But that smile instantly froze, because in her line of sight, a black figure wearing a mask was sprinting towards her at a rapid speed. She widened her eyes, fear rising from the depths of her eyes. She hesitated for a moment, quickly closed the elevator, and prepared to shout. She then saw the other person raise their hand. Whoosh, whoosh. Two white cobwebs shot out. They grazed the closing doors. Bang. The person was instantly slammed into the wall by a web. Their mouth was also sealed. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The woman cried out in fear, struggling hard. Just as the doors were about to close, a gloved hand suddenly reached in. The woman instantly cried out in even greater fear. Sensing something, the doors slowly opened. The mysterious person dressed in black walked in, murmuring, "Almost missed it. That was close." He slowly approached the woman. The woman looked at the approaching mysterious person, struggling even more fiercely, but the cobweb binding her was too tight, and she couldn't move at all. As the mysterious person slowly raised his hand, the woman's fear reached its peak, and she immediately rolled her eyes and fainted. Su Luo's raised hand paused in midair. He furrowed his brows slightly, puzzled. This works? Then he said, the hand I extended, I didn't directly retract it. Smack! Smack! Su Luo slapped the person twice. The person didn't react at all. Su Luo opened the person's eyelids and listened to their breathing. Finally, he confirmed that the person had indeed fainted. He then pulled the person down from the elevator wall and quickly tied them up with a cobweb that would disappear in 6 hours. After completing all of this, he entered the elevator and checked the warden's location. During the Victorian era, at a high-level club in New York. Here, you can truly see Victoria's Secret and call for those top supermodels. Definitely. To enter this club, one must either be rich or have connections. Ordinary people or those without acquaintances cannot enter. A car parked nearby. Kurt looked at the club and said to his boss behind him, "Boss, this club is very high level. I don't have any regular customers to introduce me, so I can't get in. If it's Norman, maybe he can bring you in." After a moment, behind the back wall of Victoria, a person wearing a duckbill cap and large-toed sunglasses was crawling. In the blink of an eye, he slipped into a restroom. He adjusted his hat and collar calmly, saying, "Do you still need someone to bring you in? There's a back door to exit from. Only respectable people use the front entrance." At this moment, a man with a flushed face and lipstick stains walked in. Su Luo followed him as if nothing had happened, brushing past him and walking out. In the corridor, many people were covering themselves up tightly, clearly not wanting to reveal their identities. This was normal. Some people were cautious and didn't even wear sunglasses and hats when doing things here. There were no surveillance cameras in the corridor. After all, the people in this place were either rich or powerful. They didn't want their privacy violated, so there were no cameras here. He immediately took out his phone. There was a location on it. These past few days, Kurt's people had been tracking the warden and had installed a location tracking virus software on his phone through close-range transmission. He glanced at it and walked towards that location, a private room. 2 men were sitting there, without any other women. One of them was the warden. He smiled and looked at the other person. "How about it? Are you interested in what I have in my hands? I heard from the middleman that you have a strong interest in strengthening the body and have been collecting relevant things. In my hands, I happen to have such data. Are you interested?" The other person calmly spoke. "Tell me, what exactly is the data? I'll judge for myself whether I'm interested." The warden took a puff of his cigar, his mouth slightly curved. "It's information about the birth of an indestructible, incredibly powerful super ability user. How do I know if what you're saying is true?" The other person scrutinized the warden. The warden sneered. "Who am I? I'm the warden of the New York prison, and I'm also considered a top figure in New York City. I've done countless deals and have never deceived anyone. I believe the middleman must have mentioned this to you." The other person spoke. "All right, how much are you selling it for?" The warden held up 2 fingers. "This much, 200,000. The warden shook his head. 200. The other person frowned. "That's a bit expensive. Make it cheaper." The warden remained calm. "No negotiations on the price. Fixed price, 200. The other person pondered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, deal." Upon hearing this, the warden immediately revealed a smile. "Very good. You have good judgment. The fact that this thing can be sold at such a high price shows its value." The other person said, "Let me see the goods." The warden immediately placed a box on the table. "Inside here is a hard drive. The data is inside the hard drive." The other person nodded and smiled. "Very well." He snapped his fingers. Bang! The door was pushed open directly. Several people in ordinary clothes rushed in, holding handguns. The dark barrels were aimed at the warden. The door was quickly closed. Seeing this, the warden widened his eyes. "Who are you? Do you know who I am? How dare you treat me like this?" The person on the other side took out an ID from his body, revealing that he was a colonel. He coldly laughed. "General, I knew you were insatiable and audacious. A test, and your true colors are revealed. Now, I arrest you on charges of treason." After saying that, he waved his hand. The soldiers behind him quickly rushed towards the warden. "You have no right to arrest me. I want to make a phone call." The warden still wanted to struggle, but he was immediately held down by several people and handcuffed. Just at that moment, bang! The door was kicked open. Outside the door stood a person with a very low hat brim and huge sunglasses, making it impossible to see their face. The colonel reacted quickly and quickly drew his gun, ordering, "Shoot." The group of people quickly opened fire at that person. Bang, bang, bang. Thank you for the encouragement in the comments. I'm really grateful. I was quite upset when I saw negative reviews from readers, but there were also readers who encouraged me, which made me happy. To be honest, I don't have confidence in this book. It's my first time writing a plot-driven story without a system, and I'm extremely nervous. Fortunately, with everyone's support, the book has achieved good results. Definitely, I know I have many shortcomings, but I will work hard to improve and write more interesting stories. 077, the number 2 Blaster Man appears. My Man of Steel was captured. 3 Dajan. In an instant, spider telepathy was activated. Facing this attack, Su Luo rolled to the side, avoiding all the attacks. At the same time, he raised his hand. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One cobweb ball after another was shot out. Several screams, knocking the guns out of the hands of several people. He immediately swooped up. Fists and knees struck, booming on the stomachs of several people. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, several members of the military fell down, spitting out bitter bile while groaning in pain. The colonel looked up at Su Luo and asked, Who? Who are you? Bang. Su Luo kicked down, directly knocking the person unconscious. The rest of you are not allowed to look up. The warden pressed against the table, quickly buried his head, not daring to look up at all. Su Luo opened the box on the table. Inside was a hard drive. He tapped the warden, who trembled in fear. He asked, Is this Carl's research data? The warden nodded quickly, BG his forehead on the table. Yes, yes. Is it complete? Su Luo lowered his voice. The warden nodded again. Yes, yes, it's complete. I never cheat in my deals. After confirming the sound of the other person's breathing and heartbeat, Su Luo nodded in satisfaction. Immediately, the whole room fell into a dead silence. Only the sound of a few people breathing. Time slowly passed like this. The people didn't dare to look up at all. Finally, the warden felt something was wrong and cautiously lifted his head a little. Nervously, he glanced around with his peripheral vision to see where the mysterious person was. But he found nothing. He quickly looked up. He found that the window not far away had been opened at some point, and the curtains were still fluttering slightly. He glanced at the people around him and quickly ran away. The soldiers sensed the warden's actions and quickly got up and pounced on him, holding him down. With a bang, the warden fell to the ground, crying out in pain. Shortly after, in a secret execution room of the military, the warden was hung on a cross, covered in whip marks, bloody. He let out a painful cry. Standing beside him was a whip-wielding person. In front of him, an old man sat calmly in a chair, watching him quietly. The whip-wielding person spoke. Tell me, what's your relationship with the person who broke in tonight? The warden cried and sobbed. I really don't know. I really don't know who he is. I know I made a mistake. Spare me. Spare me. The whip-wielding person swung the whip again, a few cracks. You don't know him. How did he know you had Carl's data hard drive? How did he know where you were making the transaction? The warden wailed. I really didn't. I only made an appointment with that colonel. I didn't mention this to anyone else. Immediately, several more lashes came down. Just at that moment, the door was opened. A soldier walked in and whispered something in the old man's ear. The old man stood up and said calmly, Continue. After speaking, he turned and left the room. Behind him came a series of constant screams and the sound of the whip. Soon after, the old man in military uniform arrived at an intelligence room. Everyone stood up respectfully. General. The elderly man in military uniform nodded slightly. A soldier quickly tapped on the keyboard, and a surveillance footage popped up. This is the surveillance footage we found from the prison's laboratory. An hour ago, someone secretly infiltrated the prison and attempted to find Carl's research data. In the surveillance footage, a masked person released cobwebs, trapping 2 guards on duty. Upon seeing this, the general squinted his eyes and murmured, Who is this? The person next to him quickly said, This is a recently emerged superhero called Spider-Man. Definitely, There's also a ghost spider, both with similar abilities. But based on the body structure in the surveillance footage, it's clearly a man. So we can rule out Ghost Spider's identity, leaving only one possibility for the other side, which is Spider-Man. Upon hearing this, the general spoke, secretly capture this masked vigilante for me, and retrieve the data. Yes, the surrounding soldiers echoed in unison. The general continued, continue searching for Carl and conduct further experiments. Yes, at this moment, a soldier walked up from outside. General Ross, Fury wants to see you. General Ross nodded. Let's go. He left the meeting room. At Aunt May's house, Peter was eating and chatting with his friend Ned. Suddenly, Peter sneezed. Achoo. Ned laughed. Who's cursing at you? Peter replied. Maybe someone is thinking of me. Who knows? Ned teased. Could it be Laura? Laura is Peter's current crush. At the moment, he hasn't started dating MJ yet. Peter blushed. What are you talking about? Peter didn't know. He had already become the scapegoat for Sue Luo while being invisible. An invisible blame was placed on his head. A plane was flying from the north of Russia to New York. Inside the first-class cabin of the plane, Madame HYDRA was lying in her seat. She was holding a tablet. On the tablet was a horrifying and bloody picture. In the dim rain, a canyon filled with the flames of war. A flight attendant passed by, took a glance, and smiled. This special effect sounds good. Ma'am, would you like something to drink? Madame HYDRA smiled elegantly. Bring me a glass of champagne. That'll do. All right. Madame HYDRA took the tall glass, swirled it, and sipped from it. The flight attendant left. Madame HYDRA put down the glass and murmured while looking at the picture. You should be in New York. I will find you. This technology should be in my hands. On the ground, cars were rushing towards New York. They were filled with mechanical soldiers. In the minds of these mechanical soldiers, they received a set of orders. Find Sue Luo. Do not let anyone else obtain the technology from him. A car was driving on the road. Kurt was driving attentively. He didn't ask about what the boss had done. Sue Luo was sitting in the back. Looking at the scenery outside the window, he fumbled with a hard drive in his hand. He glanced at Kurt and murmured, Suddenly, I feel like we're a bit like Bruce and Alfred. Kurt was puzzled. Bruce? Alfred? Who are they? Sue Luo said, a superhero and his assistant who is also a butler. Kurt smiled and said, I've never heard of that before. Sue Luo stopped talking. Not long after, Sue Luo arrived at the safe house. Sue Luo took off his coat and placed it together with the sunglasses and hat next to him. He said, dispose of these. Kurt nodded and said, Okay, boss. Sue Luo put the hard drive in his pocket and got out of the car. Inside the safe house, it was pitch black. At this moment, Claude and Xiao had already fallen asleep. Sue Luo took the hard drive and went downstairs. Sue Luo thought about the experiment that caused Luke Cage's super soldier serum recovery. The military has conducted many recoveries of the super soldier serum. Although none of the recoveries were successful, they have created beings far superior to Captain America multiple times. The Hulk, Abomination, and Luke Cage were all experiments for the recovery of the super soldier serum. There were some problems in the process, resulting in the emergence of even more powerful beings. Sue Luo couldn't help shaking his head. The military's experiments are truly a mystery. Failed but not completely, even achieved great success. Sue Luo also felt a bit amazed by the military's achievements. His attention returned to his hard drive. I've obtained the relevant data on Luke Cage. I want to see what exactly caused Luke Cage's mutation. With this experiment and obtaining some of Luke Cage's current data, I should be able to replicate a steel-like physique on myself. Now, I still belong to the category of high offense and low defense. No, medium offense and low defense. Even though Sue Luo now possessed the powerful strength of Spider-Man, his physical fragility had not changed. In the original work, although Spider-Man had great strength, he was repeatedly stabbed and shot, resulting in severe injuries. Sue Luo didn't want that to happen to him. Although he had a strong, self-healing ability, not getting injured was still the best. He entered the basement. Instantly, he saw little Spider-Man studying hard on the table. with a red string tied around its head. In front of it was a mobile phone playing beginner English lessons, simple sentences, and the pronunciation and writing of common words. Its eyes were wide open, full of seriousness, and its front legs kept gesturing and spelling words. Seeing little Spider-Man working so hard, Su Luo nodded in satisfaction. Little Spider-Man also sensed Su Luo and quickly turned around, its two big eyes looking happily at Su Luo. Su Luo praised, "Very good, very motivated. You are an excellent little Spider-Man." Upon hearing Su Luo's praise, little Spider-Man's eyes were filled with joy, and it excitedly wiggled its butt, happily spinning in place, resembling a spinning top. "Spin faster, feeling like it's about to fly." Su Luo smiled and said, all right, you continue studying. When you're tired, go to sleep. Balance work and rest. We still have training tomorrow." Saying that, he used his index finger to tap little Spider-Man's head. Little Spider-Man listened and stood tall, raising one front leg and shaking it. "Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up." Immediately, it raised its front leg, beckoning to Su Luo and pointing at the table. Then, it dipped its front leg in water and wrote crooked letters on the paper. Little Spider-Man. It wrote its own name, which is what Su Luo calls it. So it thought Little Spider-Man was its name. After writing it, it proudly stood tall and wiggled its butt twice in joy. Then, it looked at Su Luo with expectant eyes, as if it wanted Su Luo to praise it. Su Luo looked at the stack of white papers on the table, many of them soaked with water. With his keen observation, he could see traces of many letters on the paper. He understood. Little Spider-Man must have put in a lot of effort to practice writing its name. Seeing this, Su Luo touched Little Spider-Man's head and said, very good, very good." Su Luo's expression was serious as he approved. "Truly, my little Spider-Man, you have the potential to succeed. I hope in the future you can become my right-hand man and contribute to my success. Keep working hard and make your boss's future better." Little Spider-Man nodded solemnly and then raised his right foot high. It seemed like he was saying, "I will work hard for the future of the boss. I will strive and fight. Charge, charge." Su Luo nodded in satisfaction and said, "You go study. I'll go do my own thing." Little Spider-Man nodded and quickly turned around, kneeling in front of his phone to continue studying. Even inside the CPU, inside KFC, inside PUA, these two guys were outstanding. They were like a pair of talented individuals who had gathered together. Su Luo walked to the side, put the hard drive in, and started to examine it. There wasn't much data inside. After all, Luke Cage escaped immediately after obtaining the ability, without undergoing any further testing. The main contents were the formula for the special serum used by Luke Cage, various data about Luke Cage during the experiment, and specific situations that occurred. Looking at the formula for the special serum, Su Luo murmured, "This is a defective super serum formula. It should have been extracted from Captain America's blood and then researched. The super serum has already integrated with Captain America, and even during the integration, there may be some mutations to adapt to the user. So, the defective components in Captain America's blood are not originally complete serum, and they have also been contaminated by Captain America. The military probably researched the complete super soldier serum from this contaminated or defective serum. And in the end, they developed a defective and incorrect super serum. For most people, this super serum is a deadly poison. A very small number of lucky ones can withstand the toxicity and ultimately gain a strengthening ability through mutation. Definitely, there may be various coincidences in this process. For example, the gamma rays in the Hulk's experiment, or the constant near-death experiences combined with strong willpower and intense emotions. Or, for example, Luke Cage's experiment being sabotaged and the experimental parameters being modified, which actually accelerated the experiment and produced a wonderful chemical reaction. The environment, personal genes, and personal willpower all affect the results of the serum. He looked at the modified experimental parameters for Luke Cage and, combined with the incorrect serum, began to calculate the possible effects. He quickly typed on the keyboard and wrote something on a piece of paper. Soon, He calculated 293 possible outcomes. All of them ended in death. The original incorrect serum might have given a glimmer of hope. But after modifying the parameters and injecting the serum, there was only one path: death. Looking at the calculated results, Su Luo murmured, "It seems that Luke Cage's genes, combined with some other changes, helped him overcome the danger. As long as I obtain Luke Cage's comprehensive data and combine it with the data I have, I should be able to deduce the special chemical reactions in Luke Cage's body. I should be able to completely reconstruct the experimental process. That way, I can figure out how the incorrect serum created this steel body. I can replicate it on myself." Su Luo opened the surveillance. "Next, I need to find an opportunity to obtain Luke Cage's comprehensive data." Through the surveillance, Su Luo could clearly see a small restaurant. Inside the restaurant, Luke Cage was constantly serving food to customers. Various customers enter the restaurant: elderly people, middle-aged women, students, hooligans, and so on. But they all had one characteristic: they were dressed very plainly and cheaply. Luke Cage's small restaurant was meant for the common people. After watching for a while, Su Luo didn't find anything valuable. In the following days, Su Luo focused on training. His strength had also increased significantly by 6 tons. His strength had increased by 1/3 again, reaching 23 tons. Just one more ton, then he would be able to release powerful electric current attacks with his bare hands. At night, Su Luo was studying. At this moment, Kurt hurriedly walked in and said, "Boss, something bad happened." A hooligan brought an army to Luke Cage's doorstep. Luke Cage might be taken away soon. Upon hearing this, Su Luo's pupils contracted. Luke Cage being taken away. He still needed the comprehensive data from him. Su Luo immediately set off, rushing out. 078 ultrasonic weapon. Shock the Hand and Daredevil. Luke Cage's small restaurant was surrounded by a military force. A green military convoy formed a steel torrent. Inside the military, there was a small thug. The thug spoke up. "The person you're looking for is inside here. He has changed his name now, called Luke Cage. But his appearance hasn't changed, so I recognized him at a glance." An officer shouted at the small restaurant, "Carl, or should I call you Luke Cage? Come out, come with us, stop hiding." After a moment, the tightly closed rolling shutter was pulled open. Luke Cage walked out. Luke Cage said in a deep voice, "I was wrongfully imprisoned." The officer spoke. "That has nothing to do with us. We are only responsible for taking you away. You accepted the military's secret plan, so you should stay in the military and contribute to the army, instead of running around, wasting national resources." Hearing this, Luke Cage said, "I accepted the experiment, but someone wanted to harm me, so I had to escape." The officer spoke. "From now on, no one will harm you. We, the military, will protect you. Come with us." Luke Cage shook his head. "I will not hand over my freedom to others." After saying that, Luke Cage immediately rushed towards the surrounding area, trying to create a path and break out. The officer immediately shouted, "Suppress him with firepower." Bang, bang, bang. Bullets, like a grand curtain, enveloped Luke Cage. Clang, clang. The sound of metal colliding rang out. Luke Cage's clothes were constantly blasted out, but there was no trace of blood or any wounds on him. But Luke Cage showed a somewhat painful expression. It seems that although these bullets did not penetrate his body, they made him feel pain. Luke Cage roared and rushed into the military, knocking down individuals and even military vehicles. Seeing this, the officer shouted, "Everyone around, disperse." Crash. Instantly, the military force immediately dispersed, creating a wide path for Luke Cage. This scene instantly stunned Luke Cage. He had originally planned to break through, but now there's no need to break through because the other side directly made way for him. Seeing this, Luke Cage felt delighted. He immediately prepared to run out and disappear into the night. As for the small restaurant, it had to be abandoned. When he found a place to hide and change his identity again, he could open another one. Just as Luke Cage was happy, the officer quickly ordered, "Ultrasonic military vehicle. Bring it out. Suppress him." Immediately, An ultrasonic military vehicle was brought out, with a huge sound wave amplifier on top, like a lid. This vehicle was built by Stark Industries and had even suppressed the Hulk before. It had extremely powerful force. Seeing this military vehicle, Luke Cage felt a trace of unease in his heart. He immediately tried to escape, but the ultrasonic military vehicle had already been activated. Buzz. The terrifying ultrasonic emitter emitted high-frequency sound waves, causing a powerful air pressure. The air rippled layer by layer like wrinkles. Instantly, the high-frequency sound waves enveloped Luke Cage. Luke Cage let out a painful scream. He instantly knelt on the ground, covering his ears, constantly groaning in pain, trembling all over, unable to move. Seeing this, a slight smile appeared on the officer's face. This thing can even suppress the Hulk, let alone you. Even so, our treatment of you is not even 1/7 of what the Hulk would receive. At this moment, not far away, a crowd had already gathered. Most of the people around had been alarmed. Wow, such a large army. What kind of person are they trying to capture this time? Isn't that guy the owner of the small restaurant? Is he also a superhuman? Wow, look at the cracked floor. This proves that the sound wave is indeed terrifying. The fact that the restaurant owner can withstand it shows that he is indeed a superhuman. He must be a superhuman. I just saw him flipping over military vehicles. His strength is terrifying. I also saw guns being fired at him from all around, but he didn't shed a drop of blood or even a scratch. Among the crowd stood Suluo. He had already arrived at the scene, but looking at the powerful weapons of the army, he did not act rashly. Moreover, these were just the weapons displayed by the army on the surface. There might be even more dangerous hidden weapons. With his current strength, it would be extremely unwise to single-handedly challenge the army. Suluo looked at the suppressed Luke Cage and furrowed his brows slightly. He murmured, "It seems that this guy is going to be arrested." Suluo suddenly felt a gaze on him. Someone was staring at him. He glanced over and immediately noticed an Asian man looking at him. It was the leader of the gang that the Hand had encountered before. He had also had someone investigate the man who was the head of the Japanese gang in New York, Shin. He belonged to the Hand and handled miscellaneous matters for them to seek wealth. He then looked around. Suddenly, in the gap of the staircase of a nearby building, there stood a burly figure wearing a hood. He was wrapped up tightly, but Suluo saw the steel-like face of the person. Colossus, a member of the X-Men, possessing a strong physical body. However, the hardness of the other party came from the steel material that his entire body transformed into possessing great hardness. This was not the type of steel body that Suluo wanted. What he wanted was the strengthening of his body cells, making his body cells harder. This was the path he wanted to take. However, Colossus' power was also worth studying. Furthermore, Suluo noticed that Colossus' face was noticeably older, like someone in their 50s. Indeed, the older generation of mutants has aged in this era. However, Suluo was indeed somewhat surprised by Colossus' appearance. After all, most of the older generation of mutants had died, especially the X-Men. Most of them died in the uncontrollable incident a year ago. Unexpectedly, Colossus had survived. Then, he also noticed several familiar figures. The real Daredevil, Dr. Matthew, wearing sunglasses and leaning on a cane, looked ahead, but it seemed that his ears were plugged with something. On the rooftop, there was a graceful figure, silver hair, black clothes, black cat. Suluo couldn't help but sigh. No wonder it's Hell's Kitchen. Such a lively scene. So many people could gather. His gaze fell on Daredevil. The work on the steel body should be temporarily suspended. Perhaps he could first replicate the prototype of super hearing. Although Daredevil's physical qualities were those of an ordinary person, his hearing had been strengthened to an astonishing level. He could hear things several blocks away, and later on, he could even envelop an entire city in his hearing. The military officer looked at Luke Cage ahead and said to his subordinates, "Use the sonic wave weapon. Paralyze Luke Cage directly." "Yes," the subordinate responded. The sonic wave weapon had a sound level of 172 decibels. This strong sound wave paralyzed people's hearing and central nervous system, causing them to faint within 1 or 2 minutes. Immediately, a car drove out, approaching Breaki. There was also a sound amplifier on it, but it was smaller than the ultrasonic one. Immediately, the ultrasonic weapon was turned off, but the residual power of the ultrasonic waves caused Breaki to be in pain and unable to move. At this moment, the noise wave weapon was turned on. ZZZ. A powerful noise was aimed at Breaki. Breaki's eyes immediately turned red, and he let out a painful growl. Soon after, Breaki's eyes rolled back. With a bang, he fell directly to the ground. Su Luo saw this and immediately understood that the situation was irreversible. Breaki was going to be taken away. He rubbed his forehead. He didn't expect that Breaki would encounter this kind of situation. He was actually captured by the military. Seeing this, the officer nodded. He waved his hand. A group of soldiers quickly ran up and carried Breaki into a special military vehicle. After completing these tasks, the whole team was ready to leave. Su Luo in the crowd saw this and quickly took out a mechanical button from his pocket. He flicked it with his middle finger. Whoosh! The mechanical button shot out like a bullet, passing through the gaps in the crowd under the bottom of the cars. Finally, it rushed towards the underside of that special military vehicle. When it approached the bottom of the vehicle, the mechanical button suddenly emitted a strong magnetic force. Instantly changing direction, it adhered to the underside of the vehicle. Definitely, this was not an offensive weapon. After all, Su Luo couldn't launch an attack on the military at this time. This was just a tracker. Now, I can only find out where Breaki is being held and then make a plan. On the other side, Shin, the leader of the Japanese gang, looked at the fallen figure not far away. He looked at the opponent's solid cover and tall figure, and immediately thought of the mysterious person who had stolen something before. He immediately activated his ears and used the ability bestowed by the beast to listen to the opponent's heartbeat. Although the opponent used sound concealment techniques, it couldn't block the special sensing ability bestowed by the beast. The extremely strong and powerful heartbeat was not like the heartbeat of an ordinary person, but like the terrifying and powerful heartbeat of a monster. Feeling this, Shin basically understood that the person in the solid disguise was the mysterious person he was looking for. He immediately took out his phone and dialed the numbers of other high-ranking members of the gang. Hello, I found that mysterious person right here where the military captured Breaki. Send someone over immediately and capture him. After that, he sent his location to the other party. Somewhere underground in the gang's hideout, where the coffin was located. In front of the coffin stood a high-ranking member of the gang and a group of ninjas. The high-ranking member spoke to the coffin. Leader, we have found that mysterious person. The coffin lid slowly opened. The Black Void girl walked out, a hint of joy in her eyes. Very good, very good. Now go and bring him back. After saying that, she raised her hand and said to the group of ninjas, come up. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The group of ninjas immediately leaped in front of the Black Void girl and crouched down. One ninja came in front of the Black Void girl. Black Void girl immediately placed her hand on the ninja's forehead. Immediately after, a black light flashed in the ninja's eyes. Then, the dangerous aura emanating from his body became even stronger. Afterwards, one by one, the ninjas received the secret technique from the Black Void girl and became even more formidable. Black Void girl looked at the people in front of her. You have all received my personal strengthening. Your strength is far superior to usual. You guys now are already strong enough to defeat the mysterious person. Go. Yes. The ninjas nodded. Whoosh. They swiftly shot out and disappeared underground. Boom. The army, like a torrent, slowly left the spot. Su Luo didn't chase after them directly, because he still needed to deal with a little trouble. He immediately looked at the gaze that had been fixed on him all along. The gaze seemed to have discovered him. He glanced at the other person. Then he turned and left. Xin quickly followed. Not long after, Su Luo stopped in an alley. He waited for a while in the same spot. Soon enough, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed. He looked up and saw some ninjas entering the alley. These guys no longer held steel blades in their hands, but rather sharp, hard fiber blades. Seeing this, Su Luo understood that they were trying to prevent him from using his electric shock button. Not bad. You become smarter. However, Su Luo didn't find any trace of Exine among this group of squads. It seemed that Exine didn't follow. Only the ninja squad followed. One of the ninjas spoke, "Come with us, and we won't attack. You are no longer our match." At this moment, whoosh, a figure leaped down from the nearby building and landed in front of Su Luo. It was the fully equipped Night Devil, wearing a red battle suit. "I just sensed your presence and felt that you were being tracked by a group of powerful ninjas, so I came." Night Devil furrowed his brow. "They are strong. Their state is completely different, even more fierce than the last time they were strengthened. They're almost catching up to you in the previous battle. Now, even you are not their match. We need to leave quickly and not let them entangle us." Night Devil's impression of Su Luo's strength was still based on the last encounter. Su Luo glanced at Night Devil in front of him, didn't say anything, but reached for his gun at his waist. The ninjas saw this, and a hint of mockery appeared in their eyes. "A gun, it's useless against us. It can't even touch us." Su Luo released his safety. 9 people, 9 bullets, the magazine is enough. Seemingly sensing Su Luo's disdain, a cold light flashed in the eyes of the ninjas. "It seems you are someone who likes to suffer." Whoosh! One ninja rushed towards Su Luo, raising the katana in his hand. Su Luo also moved. He shot out. His speed surpassed that of the ninjas. There was no way. The current Su Luo was already completely different from before. He had already started developing spider abilities, which, on top of his already powerful speed, increased even further. In the blink of an eye, he reached the front of a ninja. Su Luo's speed surprised everyone. The ninja's pupils contracted. How did his speed become so fast? Is this his true strength? Last time, he even suppressed his own power? Night Devil was also shocked, slightly holding his breath. This speed, how is it possible? At this moment, Su Luo's speed, in Night Devil's eyes, had reached a terrifying level, even completely overwhelming those powerful ninjas. Su Luo arrived in front of the ninja, and the firearm in his hand drew a cold arc in the air. The cold muzzle aimed at the opponent's forehead, at an extremely close range. "This close, can you dodge?" Su Luo said calmly. He pulled the trigger directly. Bang! The back of the opponent's head was directly blown open. "1," Su Luo murmured. 079 Research, Reproduction, Super Hearing. The deceased ninja turned into a pile of mud and fell to the ground. Su Luo saw this. His eyes narrowed slightly. Is this also a secret technique of the hand association? Turning into a pile of mud after death. He didn't stop and continued to wait. In an instant, he arrived next to another ninja. The barrel of the gun once again aimed at the opponent's head at close range. The ninja was immediately shocked and tried to escape. But there was no way to escape. They were too close. He could only watch Su Luo pull the trigger. Bang! A high-speed bullet instantly pierced through the ninja's head. 2. He immediately fired continuously. Bang! 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 3, 4, 5. As Su Luo kept shooting at the ninjas' foreheads. One by one, the ninjas turned into mud and fell to the ground, floating in the wind. Seeing this, the remaining ninjas showed a hint of fear in their eyes. This guy is a monster. He actually has such an unimaginable speed. Too fast. We are completely no match for him. No, if we stay, it's a dead end. Escape. Escape immediately. The only thought in the remaining ninjas' minds was to escape. They glanced at each other, then turned and ran in different directions. Su Luo saw this and shook his head. Turning your back to me, isn't that also a dead end? How can you dodge the attack if you can't see the direction of my gun barrel? He didn't move anymore. Instead, he stood still and kept shooting at the fleeing individuals. Bang, 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 bang. 4 shots in a row. Instantly, those black-clothed ninjas turned into mud. All resolved. Su Luo shook the gun in his hand, and the smoke from the barrel dispersed. Nightcrawler stood beside him, still in his initial attacking posture. He didn't expect that he didn't even have the qualification to make a move. Nightcrawler's mouth twitched slightly. I, I didn't expect your strength to be so powerful. It's me who was being overly concerned. I said I would help you and owe you a favor, but it turns out I didn't need to make a move at all. Suluo still said, "Thank you, but I do have something I need your help with next." Nightcrawler nodded. "Okay, you can tell me." Suluo glanced at the time. "I will find you later. I have something to do now, so I'll leave." After speaking, Suluo left directly. Nightcrawler raised his hand. "You?" Before he could finish speaking, Suluo had already disappeared at the end of the alley. Nightcrawler's mouth twitched. "You don't know my identity. How are you going to find me?" Nightcrawler shook his head and then left as well. Somewhere in New York. In a car, Dr. Lees sat facing Caliban. Dr. Lees asked, "Can you sense the location of mutants in New York?" Caliban nodded slightly. "Yes." Dr. Lees nodded. "Lead us there." Caliban quickly gave directions and led Dr. Lees and the others towards the location of the mutants. Suluo was running on the rooftop. Perhaps he was using cobwebs to travel. He looked at his phone. There was a blinking red dot on it. That was his button tracker. The red dot was in front of him. He immediately burst into action again, running faster towards the front. Very soon, Suluo caught up with the army. Below him, a torrent of military vehicles was moving rapidly. In the midst of that torrent, there was the special military vehicle where Luke Cage was located. Suluo followed the army closely. Soon, they left the city and headed north. Finally, they stopped at a secret military base in the north. Hidden behind mountain, Suluo stood on a tree on the mountain, looking at the secret military base below. Some buildings were constructed on slightly flatter ground. More bases were hidden within the mountains. Within 2 or 3 surrounding mountains, there were hidden military bases. The entire base was heavily guarded, filled with sentries and cameras everywhere. Suluo squinted slightly and said, "So this is it. The guards are extremely strict. It's difficult to infiltrate. I can only wait for an opportunity or wait until I become stronger and have the ability to safely infiltrate." Suluo sighed. "So for now, I can't obtain Luke Cage's information. Life is full of unexpected occurrences." Suluo's mouth twitched slightly. "Let's install a camera here to monitor this base." He immediately took out a mechanical button from his pocket. This was a mechanical button with a camera function, but it didn't last long. It could only last for 3 days if left on continuously. He placed the mechanical button on a tree branch, aiming it at the base below. He then took out his phone and looked at the lens. After confirming that the entire base was within the lens, Suluo left. After all, there was no point in staying here. It seems that I can only replicate the super hearing ability for now. Instead of wasting time here, it was better to do something immediate. Suluo dialed Kurt's phone number. "Prepare a secret biological research lab for me. Hurry, I need it urgently." Kurt nodded. "Okay, boss, I'll do it right away." These days, under Norman's management, the marketing of the series of wound plasters was launched first. First, Norman approached authoritative institutions to verify the effectiveness of the wound plasters. Then, relying on his connections, he found experts in the medical and biological fields to endorse them as a marketing gimmick, coupled with the excellent effectiveness. Soon, public opinion about the wound plasters began to ferment and became more familiar to people. More people were also amazed by the healing effects of these wound plasters, while some were skeptical, leading to a dispute that erupted online. Definitely, Osborn's marketing department played a role in further expanding the dispute, because disputes were more likely to attract traffic and more attention. Only by gaining more attention could the market be opened faster. So, soon, there was an expectation for the launch of Osborn's wound plasters in the entire market. Everyone wanted to see the real effectiveness of this product. Overall, this marketing campaign was very successful. Once the product was launched, it would create a considerable sales area. Then, relying on its powerful effectiveness, it will quickly form a huge positive cycle, ultimately seeking a large amount of profit for the company, thus pulling Osborn back from the brink of bankruptcy. Besides that, after the release of this new product, as well as the endorsement of various industry experts, the market's outlook for Osborn's future caused the stock to start soaring. In just a few days, the stock doubled. It is equivalent to Su Luo making a profit and gaining double the profit. Su Luo is extremely satisfied with the current performance. He understands that Osborn's stock will soon skyrocket. He will soon become a true millionaire. Su Luo returned to New York City. He went straight to find Daredevil. He had Kurt find information about Daredevil himself, Matt, including his workplace and home address. Then he headed to Matt's home. It's so late. Matt should be at home. Soon, Su Luo arrived at Matt's home. After going in, he found that Matt wasn't home. Seeing this, Su Luo understood. This guy probably went out to do justice. Su Luo had nothing to do, so he sat on the sofa and closed his eyes to rest. Not long after, a creaking sound. The door was opened. Matt, wearing sunglasses, walked in. I didn't expect you to know my true identity. Matt continued, what do you want me to help you with? Su Luo had mentioned earlier that he would need his help soon. The other party showing up now clearly meant that he needed his help. Su Luo spoke. I am a scientist, and my recent research project requires your help. Matt smiled. If you ask me some legal questions, I might be able to help a little. But when it comes to scientific research, I really don't know anything. Su Luo shook his head. No, you don't need to help me with scientific research. I just want to study your unique ability. When Matt heard this, he paused. He remained silent for a while. So you want to experiment on me? Su Luo nodded. Yes. Matt smiled bitterly. This favor seems like it won't be easy. Su Luo nodded slightly. It might indeed be a little challenging. A little, Matt murmured. Su Luo earnestly nodded. Really, believe me. It might be a little uncomfortable, but not too unbearable. Su Luo was definitely not lying. He genuinely meant what he said. Compared to the pain he endured, the pain in the experiment was really nothing. Su Luo continued. Definitely, after this experiment, I must give you some feedback. Requesting flower 0, I will cure your eyes. He already had the lizard optimization formula in his hands, so treating Daredevil's eyes wouldn't be too difficult. Upon hearing Su Luo's words, Daredevil's eyes seemed to regain some vitality. He swallowed his saliva, somewhat incredulous. Really? Is it true? Su Luo nodded. Yes, I will definitely cure your eyes. Feeling Su Luo's seriousness, as someone who relies on senses other than his eyes, he could clearly feel the other party's sincerity. It was a sincere sincerity from the bottom of his heart. Su Luo didn't deceive him. At the same time, feeling the other party's seriousness, Daredevil asked, I want to ask something. Su Luo nodded. Go ahead, ask. If I were to disagree with your request, would you take action and forcefully take me away to conduct experiments? Su Luo sincerely replied, yes. Nightcrawler didn't expect the other party to be so honest, even with such a question. Immediately, Su Luo earnestly said, this experiment is very important to me, so even if you don't agree, I will still take you and forcefully conduct the experiment. Definitely, this experiment will not cause any harm to you, because even if it causes serious harm, I can restore you to your original state. Now that Su Luo has the lizard optimization serum in his hands, he is confident. Nightcrawler, feeling the seriousness of the other party's terrifying words, Nightcrawler felt a chill down his spine. At this moment, he felt that the discomfort he would experience in this experiment might not be just a little, but 1 billion times. Nightcrawler.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.